this is the we'll start with this. This is the time when I guess 96 or 97. I don't remember. Most I think 96. Okay. First day was rock, and second day was kind of metal, and Millennium was headlining. Yeah. Okay. But Farhad Wadia, just to make iRock accessible to everyone, made KK open for Millennium. Not open exactly, played before Millennium. So KK, I mean, he happened to be in a rock band and all that, Shiva and all that, so respect for all that. But he started off with a Brian Adams song, we were waiting for Millennium to come, so we were already pissed. After that, he started playing Tadap Tadap from one of the Dil, some kind of movie which I released there. And Hindi song he started playing at iRock, and we were waiting for Millennium, it's a metal crowd. So we said we have to do some action. So all the bottles, we collected all the bottles, and some bottles, we made piss bombs out of them. We actually pissed out this bomb, and we threw all the bottles. We started with the bottles.
It was kind of a personal contribution to.
Yeah, even I had contributed. Amit also contributed. Some of our bodily fluids were there inside, and soon the whole stage was covered with bottles, full of bottles. And KK stopped playing. He said, "Fuck, I mean, I'm not gonna play," and he walked away. So Farhad got all frenzied and stuff and all that, and he came down and he said, guys, give Hindi rock a chance. Let him play because we won't get sponsors, blah, blah, blah. I said, like, Farhad, whatever, dude, you should have kept it on the other day. When it's a metal night and you keep Millennium, don't keep KK and don't play Hindi, stuff over here. That's it. Then I don't think so KK played. Nah, he couldn't continue. Then Millennium came and we were like, oh, yeah. But you should have seen that scene. I swear if we had camera phones there, the whole stage was littered with bottles.
There used to be this one time when, one of the oldest memories of iRock was condoms being thrown and people playing volleyball with condoms. But then some of the major bands which used to play at that time were Agni, Millennium, Industry, Rock Machine, Shiva, Churavi, Gravy Train, and Uncle Gary Lawyer
used to play then also. He plays I think. Now he plays Creed.
Oh yeah,
now he goes Creed.
But that bitch has got a good voice.
I've heard his. He used to know all empty things,
No, but then.
Sorry, we are the metal gang, so we still hold true, like it's like rock versus metal for us till now.
So, give us your name, the full name.
You want to know my village name also? The sophisticated people ask it. I'm Nitin Rajan.
I'm Nitin Kumar. And
we both used to play in a band called Waterside.
Waterside, yes.
Two Nitins in Waterside.
Yeah. That was quite something, actually. Well, the rest of our band was Hitesh Gilani, who was the drummer. He's not with us over here. And my brother, Roshan, was the bassist and
founder members.
Yeah, the founder members.
No, it's not. But now it is.
So, both of you won paid as well, right?
No, I was not in paid.
He was in paid.
Yeah. Waterside without me was paid.
Yeah. Motorcycle was a 4-piece band and Fate was a 3-piece band. Some major altercations here and there and blah 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 blah.
Right. So back to see.
Okay.
Did you record that?
No, but then, what the only difference is we come from a time where it was slightly different.
I think, see, I'm talking about Warren, man. This has happened to a friend of mine 10 years ago. He was into metal 20 years ago, and 10 years ago he's become a jazz cat. Now if you make him listen to all this, it's shit, dude. It's not Warren can read that. But then you're not learning, you're not moving ahead, you're still doing the same thing. I mean, which is in a way true, but other bands are doing different stuff. You're not at the same time,
We took a lift from from some truck in Hawaii, and we were traveling. Must smoke mare something bills pee rahe.
I know.
Fuck all it was. We were not the nicest of people to hang around with because we were nasty pieces of shit. If you actually want
Get
to,
whiskey, no?
yeah. Oh fuck, when whiskey was like fucking thrown out, my god. Yeah, that was quite a.
It's just scare people and.
I think I had read one book of last time. They should tell about doing satanic rituals on the.
No, that's talk, man. I seriously,
Satanic ritual is bullshit, but that guy was wild.
Yeah. The guy was wild.
Oakles was wild. He would hit mics. He would throw mics on people, and he'll break mics and kick amps and all this kind of stuff. And puke on stage and all those other wild stuff he used to do. He was a Fijian. I think he's in Dubai right now.
Yeah.
So half of the gang guys in Dubai also. Like Sunny is in Dubai. Yeah, so Ashwin is in Dubai. So he was wild. He was
wild, but as far as the satanic ritual is concerned, we cared 4 fucks about it, man. We were only in it for the music, not the occult part.
we were like, violent, arrogant bastards,
Yeah.
but not into Satanism and stuff.
There used to be like absolute dearth of musicians who would play metal, right? So we'd usually dig people who match the attitude, regardless if wherever they came from. So it was a good network of people who kind of got together, regardless of which band they belong to or which music they listen to. The stuff was more about the attitude.
And the very fact that you're a metalhead and you want to extreme forms of metal, that's great enough. That's good enough. You're into trading stuff, you know your bands, that's it.
And the scene was too small. I mean, you could not
It's smaller than it's a niche, but even smaller than what it is right now.
Yeah. So you could not overlook somebody who has like a good collection of CDs which you want just because of like ego. You just had to okay, तेरे पास क्या है, मेरे पास क्या है, forget about it. You want to can it?
Go on.
So as far as the bands are concerned, I mean, we were more like, I wouldn't call it a family, but we were more like
Clan.
Yeah, more like a clan who hated each other.
And then we hate keyboards also. We never liked keyboards.
Yeah.
Wasn't like keyboards.
No, we were looking for a keyboardist, man. We could never find a keyboardist. That was the biggest tragedy because some of the shit that we were trying to do required a keyboardist. I mean, we wanted to pull off some black metal shit, which could not have the kind of landscapes which we would have wanted.
The symphony.
Yeah, you would want that kind of atmosphere or background created on a keyboard. And the stepsister of that was my guitar with the chorus and the echo and the delay manipulated so that it sounded somewhat like a keyboard playing in the background. But that was mother of invention right there for you. But apart from that, the keyboards never came across. I mean, we had very few keyboardists who were into metal, very few drummers, very few bassists. You want to carry?
I think it's given
Yeah.
the perfect background.
Alright, use it as a humorous point. See, I guess the main difference now hip-hop bands, metal bands are in the mainstream. Fire and Mouth, the Demonic Resurrection can play at IROC. Earlier, if you are a metal band, no ways, you're not getting any fucking venue to play. There was only Rams in Bombay. We started that because we wanted a platform for extreme metal bands to play. So, I mean, I really don't take GIR or IROC for that. Because now the scene might have changed, but in those days, metal was. I mean, just imagine how we are not exactly anti-Bollywood, but Bollywood music is not really our cup of tea. And if a rocker says that metal is not my cup of tea, being in the same clan, I really don't appreciate that. If I can listen to rock, I mean, I can tolerate rock. Don't diss metal.
The main idea behind forming any kind of event management company and pulling off rock shows and metal shows was exactly this, because we'd come across Farad coming out and saying that, metal is not in, I would not tolerate any metal band and stuff like that. I mean, I completely respect his point of view because he comes from a genre, right, which kind of, justifies that kind of an attitude. But when we were around, we were not very, apologetic about what we were doing. But we knew what we were doing and we just wanted to make things happen.
Seriously, so we had a metal fest, death fest. Obviously they were not rock bands. I mean, it's a metal fest. Rock ain't allowed. So if IROC says that, okay, even today, I mean, if you look at it, a few days ago, he had a statement on the Nokia Summit forum. He said that he was asked a question about talent in India. Okay, so what he said was, I received 300 demos this year, out of which half of them are death/thrash metal. I guess for a metalcore, black metal, everything is death/thrash because you know. So we choose to ignore these. So I still say, so the attitude is still the same. What the fuck? Just because, you still have Diana is headlining, DR is headlining, but you choose to ignore the half of the demos just because they are death/thrash. That's crap. Because now the scene has changed. Now there are more metal bands, there are more metal fans than rock fans. You keep your rock, you keep your metal, but don't diss metal.
But it's only the bands which are digital lives. Those bands will ban their public just because they are generally playing in a resurrection.
Exactly. I'm sure even why not Devoid? Why not Atmosphere or Spike Pip or all these bands? Why they in IROC? The eliminations. Why they selected today's bands? There are a lot of metal bands.
Unfortunately, what has happened is, beginning from 1993, 94, when 91, 92, when MTV came around, right? All these compartmentalizing all this stuff came around. You want to get it? Before that, it used to be complete rock. There used to be Sam Lal who used to write for Rocksteady. And he used to be like, he was majorly into black metal and death metal. And then Amit, who used to write, about rock stuff and everything was collective. But as and when, come the end of 90s, everything started getting more segregated. People started becoming more critical about, what are the stuff that they are listening to. That was quite
a lot of niches being developed, which is not happening earlier. Earlier it was rock, okay, you are a rock band. Later, I guess mid-90s and late 90s, the niches started developing. It was rock and metal got divided into death metal, thrash metal, new age, metalcore, whatever you name it.
The unfortunate part was, you've got like 20 people who are like forming bands and all that jazz, and 20 of them trying to fight their way through and cutting each other's face. That was quite weird because there was like this much of a rock scene and people were trying to get their own piece of this. It was quite weird. True. It was quite weird. Unfortunate.
I think it's still, I'm so sad that it's still happening today. I think metal bands shouldn't get rewarding even today. But metal is mainstream again.
Just let it pass. It's been passing, right? It's not. It's very loud. It's now, right now it's very loud. Just get it done.
Accessibility. India is a third world country. Okay. Just to get Iron Cobra from Singapore, how much headache you have to go through? A, you have to be able to afford it. B, you have to be able to find it. And the
C, you have to be confident that you're going to use it. That was like
Nitish's dad telling him, like, music director banega kya?
Oh, fuck that. That was amazing. I'll tell you what, all of us, right, regardless of our upbringing, the only thing that connected us were a few brands. Like, we had a few common bands, like Slayer was one of them.
Slayer, absolutely.
Sepultura, Pantera,
and Obituary,
Morbid Angel.
Morbid Angel.
Right, Death was one of the connectors. Apart from this, every member of the band had like his own choices of music. Like Hitesh used to listen to Rush a lot because he was a major fan of Neilbert. I used to listen. He used to listen to Dream Theater also.
Yeah. You guys just
You
shoot.
were into Nepal
I was
then
into-
majorly. Right?
Yeah.
Roshan was
Wanted these guys to blow it if I'm dead. They don't like it's too much.
Roshan was into Obituary and
And he was into black
the black metal stuff,
Yeah.
Emperor and
Demo.
and I was into
You also into like
I was into
Ice Stage. No, not Ice. Sorry.
Ice Stage.
Ice Stage. I'm saying you become more so old.
I was majorly into Death, Joe Satriani, virtuoso guitaring, like Henry Mark's team and blah 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 blah. But when we came together, when we had to jam, right? You take a break for a smoke, everybody shares the same smoke, one cigarette is lit up, right? By the time the cigarette is over, everybody is ready for the next day. And when we would take that, the kind of energy that would come out, that place did not have an air condition, it did not even have
There was no fan.
there was no ceiling fan or any kind of anything at all.
It was a bungalow, but it was obviously not furnished. It was abandoned.
We used to sweat like fucking pigs.
It's soundproof
And,
using our normal thermocol and all that stuff because the soundproofing obviously go out. So obviously it was super hot. Okay, so obviously we used to strip down and
Yeah,
practice.
we would be in a fucking
In our
shorts and
chutneys.
everything, fucking chuddies. But when we would jam,
pigs.
that's when the juice would really be there. You know,
Half the room was occupied by the drum kit itself.
I swear. I mean, it was crazy shit. But I don't know how we managed to pull it off. But it's amazing. I mean, the same shit that we could do on stage was even more amazing because we could see fucking people moshing right in front of us, and we seriously could not come to terms with some of that.
But I'll tell you what, I think moshing, like the difference between our first gig and second gig, okay? Our first gig was 98 October, okay, opening for Thor, okay, Motorcycle. So we were opening for Thor. And we played, I guess, 5 songs there, okay? The whole of our 5 songs, people were sitting. Okay, they didn't get up. They were sitting. Okay, and they've come for a metal show. Thor plays Slayer, Thor plays, I guess,
They were playing
Pantera, Chef and all that, okay? But that day we played 6 Feet Under, we played Sepultura, we played Palm Death, okay? And we played a couple of our originals.
Yeah.
Okay, again, I know Demon Stealer started the whole original trends and all that. We were one of the few bands who would actually play more, 3 originals and 2 covers, or at least 2 originals and 3 covers in a small set. So people are just sitting because one band who's all, the entire set list is a death metal set list. They're a genuinely death metal band on stage and people are just, what the fuck is happening? And it's a metal crowd. But when the second gig happened at IIT,
This was actually a build-up. Because when we played for IIT, by the time we came and set up our equipment, we had people standing in the front row ready to mosh their ass off. Because
and moshing never used to happen in Bombay before this, trust me.
I swear, because the Thursday before that we had played at Raz. We had opened for Thor and the news had spread. People are playing Sepultura and stuff. It was crazy.
And this is at a time when there was no cell phone.
Yeah, this was at a time when there was no cell phone.
I didn't have a phone number. I'm telling you, my family didn't know the phone. We didn't have a cell number, so if they have to contact me, like Thursday ko jam mein aane ka hai. That's it.
I remember the time when we went for
Roshan wanted to contact me, he couldn't.
But check this out. The first show, the actual show at IIT. Okay, we had gone in Manisha's car.
Yeah.
The car broke down in Goregaon, and we had no idea if we would be able to make it on time to register ourselves. Okay, we
had to go to register and then play.
Yeah.
Registration no audition. Online नहीं होता था. So registration वहाँ पे जाके fill up the form and do all those things and sign and band members, full name and all those kind of stuff. I used to give them. Tell them
And the playlist.
And the playlist. We would give them the playlist also.
That was hilarious. That was fucking hilarious.
So our car broke down at Goregaon somewhere and these guys, I'll tell you that story. There's a fun story over there also. The car broke down, obviously our friends Maruti 800, third hand, fourth hand or whatever you call it, and that we put all our equipment and gone and we carried up prize position, the chain, double bass chain pedal. Okay, now at a gig, double bass chain pedal to set it up no one knows. The sound guy doesn't know because he doesn't even know what's a double bass chain pedal. Okay, you have to set it up. That itself takes half an hour because we have to do it ourselves. किसी को कुछ पता नहीं है. Okay, so when the car broke down, going back to the story, when the car broke down, I guess half of us went in one rickshaw and another one guys went in another rickshaw. So me and Roshan and I guess, I don't know if you were there, I think I was, you were there, right? Yeah. We three went in one rickshaw and Roshan had his Torture. There was a death metal band called as Torture. Torchure, okay? So I don't know how many people have heard of it. Roshan said, like, let's have some entertainment. So, oh yeah, ये मजा आया. So he was playing some Hindi drum check stuff. So we told him Torture बजा. तो उसने Torture चालू कर दिया. रिक्शा वाले ने हम चालू किया. So we going to IIT. So we overshot IIT. You know, we went somewhere else only. Okay. Then we suddenly we realized, boss, ये किधर लेके आया तू? साहब, मालूम नहीं, मैं ये म्यूजिक सुन के पागल हो गया. He actually said that.
ये संगीत है क्या कान फाड़ने का मशीन? Oh fuck! We reach fucking Kanjo Park. We take a U-turn. We come back to IIT. And then fucking we make it on time.
Yeah, somehow we make it on time to play.
That was
shit. We wanted to listen to our stuff, play our stuff. You know, it was metal everywhere.
That's crazy shit.
Yeah, I mean, play over there.
I mean, you remember? I'll tell you what the whole scene was during the eliminations. There were not many people like hanging around there. There were more of bands. Yeah, all across India, and there were like good amount of bands
in Bangalore.
Yeah, fuck. I mean, most of the people who were in the front row were people from different bands who would dig fucking metal. I mean. I remember the time when we played, I've got photographs and stuff. I probably have video footage or whatever.
I want to see that. I think I haven't seen that in so many years.
That's crazy as shit, man. Because
I'm swearing, bro. He's exactly the same. He was just like that. Maybe he's super.
We had like fucking long hair and stuff, and the problem was, we thought that we were playing metal, and there were no other bands playing metal at that time. That was the time when the whole shift happened in our ideas, because we saw bands from Bangalore, we saw bands from Delhi, we saw bands from Shillong who were playing stuff which was like cutting edge, stuff which we have not heard of, and that was like a reality check for all of us, because
that's when the idea of Deathwish also came to our heads. That it's not just Bombay, even Bangalore has some bands. Chennai has some bands, Delhi has bands, but there's no fest like IROC or whatever your rock shows are there, your happy stuff is there, but there's no metal fest as such. So we thought, okay, we're spending so much or whatever, we're doing so much, and there's so much music around, but there's no festival for these guys to play. And that's when we decided, I guess in IC Colony, that we should start. IC Colony, obviously everyone knows Bombay, probably. So we decided that we should start a Deathfest. I think it's called Deathfest, but obviously metal bands were allowed. Like the PDD has played over there, Scepter has played, Metakix has played. Besides the death metal bands, we thought that there has to be a platform where these guys should be able to play, and across, not just from Bombay, across the nation.
Other than that, that's when we realized that when you form a band, it's not just that you listen to Metallica and you take those guys, how they look on stage and how they perform and everything, and then you try to replicate that. That's when we realized that the importance of identity, how your music actually sounds, how people perceive you. I mean, when they see you on stage, that's when the whole shift in our thinking happened. If during that IIT, if there were not 17 bands who were playing, I don't think we would have matured as far as musicians are concerned. I mean, because Zero had started playing at that time. We had
Zero's
started
first
playing.
day.
Yeah.
Scepter's first day.
Scepter's first gig. I think Metakix was around even before that, but then this was like an entirely new lineup. There was Mothers of F, there was Skeptics, there was us, the shitloads of bands, and that's when we realized that just forming a band is not exactly the coolest thing. The thing is like how you can pull it off and how you can make music that is different from whatever's there on the scene right now. And that's how the whole idea of the album came along, right? It started at that time, but then whatever the scenes happened later on, blah 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 blah. there was like a slight deviation, but then ultimately what went on that tape was like us being ourselves. That was
It
crazy.
was the first EP
crazy
which
as shit.
I mean, first metal EP which came out.
Yeah.
Totally funded by us. I mean, it actually has live drums on it, but like, we tried from whatever best we could do. But again, those days equipments were like, very hard to come by. You had your comms which were like super slow, and then to run cool an intro or reason on that, and take this. It used to take ages to just mix those sort of, you wait over there for like 15 minutes, then you okay, one part is getting mixed. It was such a time delaying process, and for a metal band to actually, even I don't remember any independent rock series except for Rock Machine and Colorblind and all that, or Millennium. No one else has released any. There was no concept of underground EPs or CDs being released. So I just
Millennium released an EP.
yeah.
They had
They had a
released
cassette
an EP.
also.
They had a full LP also.
Started off in 93, 94, you can say. Obviously, the major rock shows which were happening was IROC. Okay. But I was much more interested in the metal scene, if you ask me personally. And IROC obviously had this, Rock Machine was there, Agni was there. There was some outstation bands like Zuravi. Even Agni was outstation, but they used to play quite often in Bombay. And these were the scenes. I mean, I was pretty much into rock then, but I was majorly looking for what was happening in metal. So I think the only metal scene which evolved was around 94, 95. That's when and Rock Machine. Yeah, but when did the So 93, the rock scene was like, you go to Ranbhavan. I mean, it's like a ritual, right? From you take your train, you go to, you stand in those lines, you admire each other's t-shirts. Oh, he has a Metallica t-shirt. It's an original print, great, amazing. Someone who has a Judas Priest t-shirt, it's like, it's quite amazing. Or you have your general Iron Maiden t-shirt, which you used to get at Fashion Street and stuff like that. And you exchange tapes over there. Exchanging tapes was a big deal, in '93 and all that. So all your underground metalheads would exchange tapes and lyrics and lyric sheets, Xerox lyric sheets and stuff. So this is like I said, this is the pre-internet era. So all those shit used to happen, and the scene was generally rock bands. '94, you can say later on was when Brahma came into prominence. So they were the first metal band to actually get onto the stage, as in the IROC stage, along with Millennium. So from Bombay, the Bombay scene, Brahma was there. Then there was a band called as Mortuary. Then there was Mayhem. Mayhem was a decent metal band. And then Chakravyuh was around. There was a band called as Witch Hammer, which is before Chakravyuh. So all these bands were there. But your underground scene, I think, around '95 is when Raz Rhino started having the every Thursday shows, and it was primarily. I mean, we used to go check out bands like Dead Sea Scrolls, Mortuary. I still remember one of the IROC shows where we were there, and the Mortuary guys were, they had these hand printed or whatever, handwritten posters, and they were putting up their posters on Thursday at Raz Rhino. The coming week, Mortuary is performing. So we were all curious, which band is this? And then we went for that show, and they covered stuff like Sepultura and 96, 95. It's pretty huge for us. They did. It was majorly thrash metal. Most of the bands would cover Megadeth, Metallica, Anthrax, Sepultura, Slayer. These were the bands. And your rock scene was also evolving. There was a band called as Cusp. Cusp was I think this is what we had missed out last when we were also discussing. Cusp was a decent band. They would do alternative stuff like they would come up on Jam, Alice in Chains. They would do stuff like that. Again, like I said, these days most of your stuff was covers, 70 to 80% covers and 20% originals. Because like how we have today, today there are bands playing much more originals. But in those days, I think you haven't heard these songs live. They were, and very less exposure to these kind of songs. So you would go to concert and hear a lot of songs for the first time. You know, so that was quite a rush because I remember. I mean, I had heard Dead Embryonic Cell being covered by Sepultura's track, Dead Embryonic Cell, which was covered by Mortuary for the first time. I heard it at a live show instead of stumbling upon it on the internet or somewhere. And then we started exchanging tapes and stuff like that. Am I going? I'm not going era wise. Loosely covering it. Okay. क्या करें अभी what
Just see if you covered the pointers and stuff.
Yeah, let's speak about shows, the whole night shows. The difference was, I guess, I don't know how many the old time rockers will remember. There was this politician called as Pramod Navalkar. When he came into power, the Shiv Sena government was in power in Bombay. They started getting into the censorship of rock. So you were supposed to submit your lyrics before the show. So the organizer had to submit the lyrics, and you can't take off your shirt on stage. That was one of the rules. And your shows can't go beyond 10 o'clock. So this was quite a dampener for all your rock shows. I think this is pre-97. So pre-97, the rock show could run beyond 10 o'clock, and IIT would have your full night rock shows where Parikrama would play for 3 hours. The other opening bands, Pentagram, and these guys would play deep late into the night. Eliminations would go on for the whole night. IIT elims were was pretty rocking time because you would sit the whole night at the OIT or wherever the LMS was being held, and bands would just keep on performing. So I think after the Shiv Sena government which came in, a lot of shit has changed. Then the 10 o'clock deadline really killed a lot of rock shows. Because like you say, in Bombay, by the time you reach and the rock show starts, there's much less time. So that censorship shit was like quite funny. I think one of the censorship happened in Iraq also when Moist Vagina had to change the name to Chaos Theory. I think that was quite a. It made quite a bit of mainstream news. I mean, it was almost carried in the front page of Times of India because of that. I mean, that was when rock made front page news just because someone had to change the name from Moist Vagina to Chaos Theory. I mean, I guess they were a kick-ass band, but this is again coming to the early 2000s when these guys were playing. And like I said, we started out, like for example, the metal scene after Mortuary. Rust Angels was a very good band. This is pre-Scepter, so like I think even Timir and all these guys would look up to guitarists like Clever. Clever is the guy who's come out with these FOK 1, 2, 3 series. So Rust Angels used to win a lot of competition, and a lot of us would look up to bands like Rust Angels, Mayhem. Sachin was a great guitarist. Then the thrash metal era was slowly started fading away when we guys, Motorcycle, we started playing in '98. That's when we moved on to death metal, covering bands like Napalm Death, covering bands like Sepultura, covering bands like, and then we had a few of originals also. Like we had some 6 odd originals, but we wouldn't play all our originals because the crowd was really not into it. So we would play like maybe 3 to 4 originals and still stick to 6 odd covers and stuff. So this was '98. I still remember when we were playing at IIT, like how we interacted with Cryptos and all this, all the other bands. So that's when we knew that there is a metal scene outside Bombay, and you can really interact with these guys. And we actually that's when Deathfest, the idea of Deathfest came along. So '99, you could see Abhor. There was Mothers of F. Mothers of F was used to cover stuff like Rage Against the Machine, majorly alternative. Like Cusp was still around, but Mothers of F. But again, the main rock scene was dominated by Pentagram for most of these years, '95 onwards. Industry had disbanded by then. Agni would come. So a big Bombay band, I would say Pentagram. But slowly, with the introduction of electronica and all that, your crowd was starting to move towards much more heavier stuff. So '99, I think Abhor came into the picture. Abhor was, they were also pretty much the Slayer, 6 Feet Under. The death metal scene had just started evolving. And 2000 was when, or all hell broke loose when all these bands from across India came across to play for Death. So I think that was a milestone for your underground scene. Yeah, 90, in the early days, the 90s, early 90s to mid 90s, there would hardly be any. The scene was dominated by rock cover. Bands would cover your basic rock. Maximum they would reach out to was, Guns N' Roses was pretty popular as a cover band. Pearl Jam, Nirvana, that's it. Metal, when it came to metal, I guess Millennium would come over there and they would cover stuff like Pantera, which is okay, but the originals were much better. They would cover Iron Maiden. So you had heavy metal. Heavy metal was being touched upon. Thrash metal was just emerging. I guess Mayhem, Mortuary, and Dead Sea Scrolls. These were the three bands which brought thrash metal into Bombay. Made it much more popular, covering stuff like Megadeth, Metallica, Testament. Like I said, all these bands in those days, it was difficult to form a thrash metal band. Why? Because you need a kick-ass guitarist. Because in those days, all your bands, metal bands, had decent guitarists. And guitaring is something which you really can't. It takes time to learn. So I guess even today, you can get away with not having a lead guitarist. If you're a metalcore band or a death metal band, you can get away with not having a good lead guitarist. But that is a must. So that is the thrash metal era with really good guitarists like Sachin, who played for Mayhem, and the Dead Sea Scrolls had Valmik, I guess, and yeah, and Scepter. Scepter also emerged around '98. In fact, we played together with them Scepter's first show at IIT December '98. So by then when Rust Angels came into the scene around '96, even thrash had what do you call it? There was a stagnation for thrash also. There were umpteen Megadeth, Metallica cover bands. So that's when the underground, like with a lot of these tape distributions and death metal was coming into India. So that was another point of transformation where death metal emerged with bands like Motorcycle, Horde, later Demonic, and Belial. Belial used to play at Death Fest, and Blasphemy, and all these bands which came from out. They also got, they were instrumental in getting this transformation done. Cryptos, Thenody. So I guess that's one part of transition which I've seen.
So, can I ask you?
Better.
Alright, so like were you in a state of mind at that point of time when you were playing live music? Was it that you still wanted to play covers, or you did enjoy playing covers rather than playing OC titles? Was
No,
it
see,
being a band that would listen to OCs and started?
I'll tell you. See, we were a band, as in we've been trying to form a band since '96. If you ask me, '96 we were sure we wanted to be a death metal band, but we had no musicians. Okay, we toyed around with a lot of these single bass drummers because in those days double bass was unheard of. Even when you go to your shop, I want to purchase a double bass pedal, they wouldn't have it. In places like Furtado's, they said we have to get it from Singapore, a double bass pedal. So no one has seen a double bass actually. Maybe Thor was using it and Karma. Then we bought one double. Our drummer, we actually made him buy a second-hand double bass, and he learned double bass. So once we reach that stage, then only we can think of, how do you start playing your own music? You don't just start playing your own music. You first at least you cover. That's when cover comes in. You start playing the bands you aspire to be like. So for us, it was like Napalm Death, 6 Feet Under, Sepultura. These are the bands we started. So that can we do it? Can we reach up to that mark? Are we? As in, I'm not saying musically, but at least can we try playing that kind of music? So how do you judge yourself? So that's how covers happen. But even '97, I still have some lyrics and stuff. We had composed 4 originals in '97, '98. We had 4 OCs. So, but again, OCs was really not accepted in those days. The crowd was used to listening to covers. So we were one of the few bands who would at least mix and match, like I said, 60 to 40 or 70 to 30 in favor of covers, and we would introduce our originals during the set. So we always had a focus because, like I said, Motorcycle, which later became Fate, was the first metal band in 2001 to come up with an EP. So our focus was always to do original music. But then we loved doing our covers also.
I have another question. It was like it's pretty evident that this thing really had a sudden change. You know, I mean, it was very evident that people suddenly started going for original music than covers. Do you think that bands coming to India and playing their original things like when I'm Million came to India, and now I'm Million comes, Megadeth comes, Machine Head comes, Opeth came. So people can see the bands themselves, and that's why they want to see what the Indian band want to do, and that's why you think like this change from covers to
Okay. To answer your question, see, these bands came now. Okay, in Bombay, like earlier there was no scene in Bangalore. If an international band, I mean, this is I'm saying when our government was much more lenient and entertainment taxes were much lesser. I guess Sting, played over here, but okay, again that's a bygone era. I mean, we were really small then. But Deep Purple was one of the first bands which international band which played in Bombay. So of course that was that's when these kind of bands started. But I guess the transition happened. I would say when Zero started playing a lot of original music, I would give credit to them. Zero started just slowly. I mean, though like I always say, there's a metal rock divide and all those kind of things, but I would still say Zero started this trend. You could say in Bombay, particularly when they started playing their own music. They completely abolished covers. So that was a decent step. And slowly, I guess even Demonic, no matter what kind of music they produced, they were quite young then. So maybe they couldn't cover those black metal bands because it takes a lot of musicianship. No offense to Sahil, but to cover those kind of stuff. So maybe that is one of the reasons he wanted to do only originals. But hats off again. Sahil came out with his own brand of original music, and I still remember at Deathfest 2000, he only played his own stuff. I mean, This Is My World of Sadness and stuff like that, which is commendable for the young age. And Blasphemy in 2000 just did 2 covers and they played 8 originals. They covered Propane and one more band I really don't remember, but we only remember the originals in 2000. Scriptos had the originals. We had 4 originals in Deathfest 2000. So that transition was happening. Okay, but yeah, to reach a stage where totally shunning covers, yeah, that is huge. That is, I think that came with when original recordings started happening. That started releasing EP. When Zero started selling CDs at iRock, Demonic started. They came out with an album. Fate came out with an album, and there were a lot of compilation. Like I said, FOK 1, 2, and 3. All these bands. So even the audience could see the product, see the output. That slowly, there was a transformation where people could accept more originals, which I guess every year on year it kept increasing. 2000 onwards, year on year, there was less covers happening and much more originals coming in. Like, because if you look at a band like PDB, they also started, they would do Korn. They were known for their Korn covers, or I don't remember which other bands they used to cover, but they also slowly integrated the originals. But today, a band can just come in and just play the originals, and they still will be accepted. So I guess that's partly because of other bands coming over here, partly due to exposure, partly due to recordings which is happening.
Make money out of it, or bands who could run for about 25 years or whatever.
How much did you guys spend on the album or the EP?
We spent on the album what the arrangement was. We'll put up a show, right? We'll give the record label a banner space, right? They will help us in recording our EP, right? And we pay whatever was additional charges. So we paid what around.
See the production cost and actually the production, I mean not the music production, the CD production and the album inlay and artwork and all that was totally borne by us. I really don't remember how much, but obviously tons and thousands. And from those days, I mean the printing technology and all that, and pressing of CDs was not really pressed. I mean you'll have your stickers which have been applied onto it and all that, which we've really done. But the recording we recorded at Throat Clash was really not paid for us. Because it is part of the deal where, where all our Deathfest shows,
Protlax was the associated with sponsors and stuff.
Sponsors.
And we got their bands for that Deep Throat CD which was released. So all those bands we had got, when they were over here for Death Fest, they also went to Protlax, and that was Protlax's first actual release.
Yeah. The most comic part of the whole CD release was, the CD, the sticker on the CD was made by us, right? Every CD which has a sticker on it was cut by either me, my brother, Nitin or Hitesh, right? Every CD which was packed was either done by any one of us four.
Totally everything, homemade product.
Yeah, everything from mailing, shipping, and doing anything with the CD was done by us. So it was
DIY in those days. Maybe even today, at least you have some underground labels and you are promoting DSR, grades or and all that, and at least live drums can happen, studios are there, at least things are better, but it still hasn't changed that much. Even today, mixing doesn't happen. Not mixing, mastering doesn't happen in India. So things are pretty much, at least there's better technology. Maybe bands are on a much better platform for whatever reasons.
They've got avenues to perform, but then it's not taken on the kind of movement that it should have. I'm not satisfied with.
Only because of the venues. I mean, I still feel
maybe it's
more venues. More gigs happen, more people will get inspired, more bands will happen in turn. See, after that shutdown, there's no regular Thursday gig which happens in Bombay. So many bands, I mean, how many gigs do have atmosphere that other year?
I remember like a year back, our drummer was Hitesh and he's in Australia, okay. So I got him on one of the chat rooms and stuff, and he had asked me to mail him some of the songs that we had as a soft copy, and I did. And he had spread it across, all the friends that he has. And there was this radio station in LA which had played the entire album. Some shit had
college radio station.
Yeah.
Radio station which had played
all of these things, mattered a lot. Right now, if you look at the scene right now, I mean, things like these would not be so significant. But
in those days,
in those days it was like huge.
Like actually some radio station in the US.
It is still used to be played abroad.
Yeah.
It's still used.
Because each and every band that we have met, we have spoken to, would love to put their music across the world.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing.
It's important
It's right on there.
The plus point of the whole rock scene in India is that we don't look at ourselves as rock bands from India. We look at ourselves as citizens of a global community. It's like the haves and the have-nots. Some people who listen to rock and metal, some people who don't. It's just that we're looking for that kind of connection across the globe. You'd see some of our series floating around in Estonia. That's probably because some of our friends are over there spreading our series across, right? And we'd see some bands in India which we would not listen to on any radio station or on any of the video playing channels, right? But these are bands which probably our friends would recommend to us. So it's like the community, that's it's quite.
It's underground, it's a new network, word of mouth. Internet helps, I guess. Internet has been a great in connecting the whole metal community.
There's this friend of ours who had gone to Estonia. Okay, this
He's
another
still
friend
there.
who's he's still there. He's got a band over there, right? He still gives out some of our CDs. Rips it on CDs and passes it on to people that he knows. Saying that there was this band in Bombay a few years back and they used to play some cool stuff and this is their original. Just give it a try. That's cool stuff. I mean, frankly, if you ask me, I still have Agni's album. I still have Millennium's album, right? I still have Rock Machine's few songs, and we keep on trading that. I've got Colorblind also. Regardless of the genre that they belong to, we are actually part of the same community if you actually look at it.
That's why it sucks when when people distinguish people like Farhad and all, GIR. I mean, GIR is still better right now, but when Farhad says stuff like this, it really sucks. I mean, why differentiate between rock and metal? Like, keep it the same. It's part of the same community.
Especially when the community is way too. I mean, it's
Even he's fighting for sponsors.
Yeah.
I mean, we know how difficult it is, and then why does he want to alienate the metal crowd by saying stuff like that?
But today it's actually proved to a stage that rock has become strongly mainstream.
True.
Agreed.
Strongly.
Agreed.
Like every other guy, you would rather go to Hard Rock Cafe than any other bar.
True,
Because
because
if you want to enjoy.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I guess as a nation we we are like we follow the trends which are already set. So if there's a movie which is like rock on and all those kind of movies coming up, if it's rocking is like a buzzword used by the media, these all gets consumed. So the common man thinks, just to associate yourself with guitar. If Saif Ali Khan is playing guitars and all that, all your ads will become Parikrama will jam with Saif Ali Khan. Suddenly he's the rock icon. So MTV's whatever that Desi Rock. Right? Yeah, and that is Karishma Kapoor, like, because she's her boyfriend. I mean, her boyfriend is Saif Ali Khan. She's being used as a mascot. What's the fucking connection?
No,
I mean, so people think rock is cool.
The scene is all of this is if you actually if given a choice, right? If you allow a person to choose for himself, right, between a Pantera, Black Sabbath, and a Led Zeppelin, right, and a Doors, right? If you allow him to choose, right, it would be a choice that he would make consciously, right? But if you look at any peer pressure or channels playing certain kind of music or media promoting a certain kind of music, that does not mean that people who are listening to rock or metal or a specific kind of band like psychedelic rock, there would be people who would be listening to Porcupine Tree, right, who do not get the kind of exposure that they should, right, does not mean that those people do not exist, right? We as a community, as a civilization, right, should respect that. There are choices available, there are alternatives available, right? People who like metal will listen to metal, people who like rock will listen to rock, people who like alternative will listen to alternative, people who like Bollywood music will listen to Bollywood music, right? The respect that we should have for every person who makes that choice is somewhat not there yet, right? Maybe 10 years down the line, people will respect, if you had to listen to Bollywood and then in the evening you have to jam on some heavy metal. That kind of flexibility is not permitted because people, at this point in time or even 10 years back would not permit that kind of flexibility in personal choice. Ultimately, what is music? Music is something that you would believe personally, right? Probably you're listening to Dimmu Borgir. Maybe the next song that you would want to listen to is maybe Bryan Adams. Pardon the example, but
See, that really doesn't matter. Like what you're listening to. You on your playlist, you might have 10 different things depending on your mood and whatever you are. But when we're talking about opportunities and platforms to perform and play, and if there's an underground, like IROC is still niche or whatever it is, there is some commercialization and all that. Just giving an example of IROC. What I'm trying to say is, your establishments, your organizers and all that, I mean, they have a platform in which, for them, the maximum they stretch is rock. Okay? Because anything beyond that is not, it cannot be consumed in a in an environment where we are eating or all those kind of stuff which people like hard rock must be considering. So then this becomes, that's how these things become underground. And then no radio station is playing you, no channels are playing your stuff. It's all underground. It's all through internet, word of mouth, podcast, you name it. So that means you have to create that infrastructure yourself. So actually, what is happening online?
Actually,
today.
if you actually look at it, right?
That's why you feel niche and you feel that okay, you are okay, you might call it have-nots, but metal doesn't mean that you will slot yourself that I'm the victim. And he'll make his own way and he'll try and promote it.
That's how the scene is. Yeah, that's how the scene has been in the last 10 years. Like if I have been in the scene or if Nitin has been in the scene, right? Our analysis of the whole scene is such that what the situation that we were in 10 years back were the same constraints that a kid right now would be facing, right? It's just that it's only a matter of making that connection with the neighborhood guy who probably listens to the same music that this guy is listening to, right? So if I had some kid in the neighborhood who's probably listening to Napalm Death and I've heard that band, it's only a matter of making that connection, right? The constraints wise, we are walking through a sea of shit if you actually look at it. But if we get through, right, would depend on how many people make that. I mean, how many people are determined and decide to make that change. How many people who would make sure that make a documentary which brings out some of that counterculture that is existent within the.
See, documentary is one way. Another way would be like how
Make like rock shows.
Yeah, we organize breakfast now. These guys are there's resurrection which is happening. Despite all, it's the same scenario. Despite all, against all odds, we are trying to create a scene so that will keep on continuing. This is gonna be niche. This is gonna be underground. This is gonna be the underprivileged or whatever it is. So that fight will go on. Your tools and communication and everything will improve. Your access to technology, and everything will improve because that's a change which is happening globally and on a national scale. Like India is opening up open markets and everything. Other guys setting up shops over here and all that. So that will improve. But again, the attitude that this kind of music is not mainstream. I mean, we don't want it to be mainstream. But like abroad, how even today all these bands, like even today Napalm, if you go to the MySpace page of Napalm, they're gigging every day. You go to Slayer, they're gigging every day. You go to Hate Eternal, they're still gigging every day. I mean, like I'm amazed. Dying Feet has been around for 20 years. They're still gigging every day. They still have gigs. Can you imagine? As in, a death metal band has been around for 20 years. So that means they're doing Europe. When having 15, 20 people. Like one of our friends in the US, when Opportunities was playing, there were some 20 guys in that show. But still they're playing. So that means we should look at more venues and some of these things has to happen. Other than that, the scene has to go on. It'll still be underground. It'll still be niche.
Other than that, what we need is some people who can see 10 years down. I mean, 10 years back, we could not look at forming a band as a career option. We need a career option where we can be musicians and be taken seriously. Given a choice, I work for a bank. If given a choice, I would be a studio musician. But I don't get to break into the scene, right? I would love to do something of that sort.
It's touring circuit which will give you some money. So there has to be a circuit. Other than that, record sales are really not happening. I mean, how many people actually, even we don't buy that many CDs, right? I mean, honestly, if you ask me, come on, all of us, we will support some cause and supply some of the CDs, but mainly we all rep, right? We all rep CDs and all that. So that's not an every way you can make money. So it's all right. I'm not anti. Anti-sharing and all that. Sharing is fine. That's how at least people will come to know about it. But gigging is where at least the money are making money and then making money to sustain yourself as a band, not as a career option. Being in metal career option, I still feel is difficult. It has to be a buy. You'll have to have a day job and do your metal stuff. Like the movie Anvil. I mean, if you have seen the movie Anvil, that shows it all. You have to watch that movie. Seriously, I have it with you.
Crazy stuff. I mean, seriously, if you ask me about 25 years back and 25 years hence, the scene has not changed much. It's just that the faces have changed. Right? We would be probably sitting where you are sitting right now about 10 years back. But then 10 years down the line, the scene is still sucked because you still could not make money out of making music. You still could not earn a living. You could not do all the stuff that you would have chosen to do if given a choice. It's unfortunate. I would have loved to make music for the rest of my life, if you actually ask me.
Go on, let's work on that. Other album. He's still there.
How many songs we have apart from the album? Like we
Apart
released
from the
6
album.
songs in the album, right?
On the album, yeah, there are about 5 or 6 songs,
Yeah.
right? Apart from that, we had about 5 or 6 more. In fact, 5 or 6 more which we used to play on the gigs.
Okay.
Right? There were shitloads of others which were there, which we scrapped. Right? 5 or 6 others which we used to play on the gigs.
That means like you had like around 12 to the release song.
We had planned to launch another album.
Okay.
But things didn't work out in that direction. Whatever reasons.
Do you still have any collab recordings or anything of those songs? Or it's completely lost?
No, I don't think so. The only songs that I have are a few riffs on my head. I could probably pick up my guitar and jam a couple of times. But then most of the stuff was not recorded. But they were like fully formed songs. Yeah.
With lyrics and everything.
With lyrics, with all the arrangements properly done and played a few times online. I mean, on stage.
Okay.
So, yeah, we had songs. I mean, see, I'm telling you, as far as not only Fate, or Motorcycle, or Zero, or Scepter, if you actually look at all the kids who were there at that point in time, there was immense amount of talent. Right? It was just that we did not have the amount of opportunity which should have been there. It's like that. I'm sure that Scepter would have come up with an album long time back if they had the opportunity to do, or Zero would have come up with an album much longer. Yeah. I mean, it's not that talent is not there. It's just that opportunities are not there. I mean, there are people like us who would try and create opportunities, but there's only about as much as we can go. Beyond it, we need a little bit of push, which was not exactly around when we went to
This is recording facility.
Yeah.
Go fast, go fast.
We go.
Soft drink is so action. What should I get? Soft drinks? The booze over?
I think it's Zero.
The booze is also fun.
और है ना?
Wait. Rolling. I think we'll have to stop now because the noise is getting too much. Can you tell us about the show? Like Death Fest, when you started it out? Like, how did the company came into being and how did the entire show happen? And how did you get all the bands that were playing?
I guess the company, I guess the idea obviously when we were gigging, IIT was a major area, venue where we thought, okay, there are bands outside the country also who are into metal and death metal and extreme metal and stuff like that. So we thought we should have, obviously there was no platform for us besides every Thursday gig at Labs. So we thought we should have an opportunity where it's only purely metal bands for metal fans and a metal show. That's how.
The whole idea came across because one of the main reasons was iRock, and I don't know how to say this, but the whole idea of iRock was quite biased towards pure rock, and I mean it never made sense to us because frankly, if you look at it from our point of view, we were just a band. We were trying to, get our music across to people, but we could not find any avenues to do that, and it was quite frustrating, right? The only way we could go about making a change was to either, set up a rock show or set up a show where we could get bands like us to perform, or we could, keep on sending our demo tapes to iRock and get rejected by the end of it. We chose to do the first one. Right, that's how we decided to make the change.
And the company came across why? Because obviously if you want to run for sponsor, you need to have a company.
Yeah.
You need to pay your taxes, you need to have your PAN card and all that. And that's how actually I got my first PAN card also.
Yeah.
Because we registered creators over there, and I guess how many people like in our 20s, all of us. So most of us.
And other than that, if you ask me, right, at that point in time, right, there were a lot of our friends within our group itself who were doing management studies and stuff, and who were learning about entrepreneurship and stuff like that. And some of the ideas that came about was through them, because there was Chirag, there was Mahesh, there was.
I mean, these were like on the fringes. I mean, they were rockers, metalheads, whatever.
Yeah.
They were not in bands, but they kind of they suggested that you can actually go out and look for sponsorship, make presentations,
Yeah.
And we actually did the corporate rounds, and this is like 2000.
I swear, man.
Yeah, we went to, you name it, you name the FMCG, we went over there, you name the Boost company, we went over there. And then we were, I mean, I was still in college then, I guess we were in still
All of
college.
us in college.
Maybe one guy, they were also in the final years.
Yeah.
So we went across and actually hunted for sponsorship for something called as Death Fest.
Yeah.
Okay, now if you go to a brand, just imagine this, Colgate presents or Limca presents Death Fest. It will never happen. Any brand would not want to be associated with something called as Death Fest, right? You're promoting death. No, so what we did was we called it Domination the Death Fest.
Yeah.
That's how we wanted it to be the Death Fest.
We tried playing it smart because we had really educated people with us who thought we were fucking smart as or something. Domination, the Death Fest.
Domination and Death Fest was the small, small points.
Then we had that in words. That actually worked.
So
Because we had
which is that company, I still can't remember the company which actually sponsored, the title sponsor for Death Fest.
There was
It was obviously a cigarette. GTC. Not tobacco. GTC had sponsored. At least I think they only put up ads, honestly, nothing else. Everything else we did on our own. Even from the directing that Tambu, which is the stage on Raz launch.
God, printing the freaking entry
posters, the poster. Before the gig, we were all over Juhu putting up posters.
We were driving around all over town. We were sticking posters on places.
Morning was the gig.
Yeah, morning was the gig, and we were plastering all posters all across.
6 o'clock if it's your gig, and till 3 o'clock we were putting up posters everywhere. On
Two guys.
Posters we had designed ourselves, the passes we had designed.
Guess what?
We got it printed.
Two guys on KB 125 Bajaj. With a piece of fucking posters plastering all across.
Yeah.
Some guys in some car and some
we were
guys.
also worried about jamming also. Dude, have we done that song?
Yeah. Have we practiced enough to play? Are we confident enough to pull it off?
Because we organizing the gig, getting the sponsors, doing it everything on our own, And I got wild at Archie's also then. Once remember that. Because Archie's was supposed to give us some cash component, to which we got. And actually it turned out to be a barter deal where they gave us, all these cards and all that and gifts and all that. Take this and put it up on your stall. I said, what the fuck? And I actually shouted at that guy, and these guys are like, hang on, dude, don't ruin your corporate relationship. And I blasted away those guys, and they quickly shut the door and went off and all that. Made it like, because we were pissed, because we wanted some money to come in, right, for the gig. It was an outdoor gig, not inside Raz. You need to let the lawns, sound guy, then he was doing the sound, the proper sound system, not your Wilburn kind of small setup.
It was one example
We put in our own money, our own. We were not even earning, I don't know where that money came from. I think some savings and all that. We put in all of us had pitched in, it was 7 of us, I guess. And besides playing, and the best part, I guess, how we got the bands was, we put up a site, I guess on Angel Fire, on one of these free hosting sites. And we put up a Death Fest site. And actually, there were bands from Bangladesh and Pakistan who were interested in 2000 to come and play for Death Fest.
Yeah, there was this
Okay, but how do we get them here? I mean, Aja, come over, Wagah border cross karke Aja. No ways, dude. I mean, so we couldn't get them, but Yama from Bangalore, Blasphemy from Chennai.
There was Dawn from Pakistan.
Dawn, Dawn, I guess you all know.
Some band from Das.
Das,
Like the other end of the
Task was there.
That's to sign on to DSR.
Yeah, so they were interested in coming. But finally, I guess Cryptos and those guys were not ready then, the Cryptos came? Fitness Play.
Yeah,
Right?
Cripples played.
Yeah.
Cripples played, Trinity played. See, these were the bands that we knew from IIT. Right? We started with whatever we had. Right? Other than that, we were like some kids who were trying to be pulling off some corporate shit with absolute no background on it.
But naivety sometimes helps you to do stuff which you otherwise wouldn't have done. No?
Later on, we got Rudra also.
Yeah, in 2001.
That was quite wild. I mean, things were looking up at that time. But
like going back to Netflix, that's how Netflix actually started. So this website thing really helped because a lot of these guys, they were posting over there. I mean, website really. In those days, cyber cafe. Okay, no one had internet.
Yeah.
So go to cyber cafe and log in and post a comment and wait for like 10 minutes that will refresh and.
Frankly, if you ask
maybe come the next day and see is my comment still posted.
Yeah.
Yes.
Frankly, if you ask me, the websites were designed by people who were genuinely into mega, who did not charge a single penny for it.
Absolutely. Like this guy, he used to stay in Ambernath.
Yeah.
He had his own cyber cafe over there, so he helped us design the website. He was a metalhead.
Sure.
These guys would come from Ambernath to attend these gigs. He's right now in Estonia.
Everybody would, chip in, whatever they could to make things happen. I mean, that kind of desperation I've not realized since.
Yeah, maybe then some different this resurrection also is quite tough for me.
Yeah.
How to do it. But that time, we can always say, okay, the fairly bar types. So first time. So that's how we got the bands. And there was some crap which happened at the show also, like how the cops came in and there was rain and everything and all that. But we somehow managed to pull it off and it went off recently. And till 2003, 2001 to 2003, this was the platform where I reached metal bands to come and play. You name it, the bands in those days. If you were a metal band, you have played at place. We would give them travel and food and stay and stuff like that. We would at one point in time we would give them stay in Orchid Hotel, okay? Like imagine a band staying in 5-star hotel, total eco-del. Cryptos and these guys, and I guess one of these guys had written a blog describing how super it was, just chilling out over there in a 5-star hotel. So that is what barter deal we had done, which is quite cool. If we couldn't pay the bands, we could do the travel.
Frankly, if you ask me, right, going back about 10 years back, right, few kids from very modest middle class backgrounds to pull something of this sort would require a little more than just regular garden variety passion. We were driven. We were fucking driven. We wanted the scene to work out. We wanted the stuff to
only
be
for metal. There's no bad. This metal hasn't that too extreme. The extreme metal kind of variety. Not your metal, Megadeth, cover bands. No. Beyond that.
All the people who helped us on that show did that for absolutely zero money.
And this was because you name it, I guess Demon Sealer was there, that was one of his first gigs. Pradeep, I still remember Pradeep was there, we climbed one of the barricades and stuff, and he was headbanging and all that to all those bands when Blasphemy was playing and all that. All these, you name it, all these guys, I'm sure they were, today's band who inspired a lot of other bands, they were there for Death Fest then.
Frankly, if you ask me, if we could have ensured that as a tradition where, we pass on the baton to the people who have come into the scene later on, and they pass on the baton to somebody who have come to the scene after that, we would have seen Death Fest still happening. I would have preferred to go to a Death Fest and see some new freaking bands playing rather than living in the past.
In some certain ways, if you see Resurrection kind of resurrected the whole metal scene after Death Fest got over. When did it exactly start? I don't remember. 2005 or 2004?
Yeah.
2003 Death Fest got. After that we did
around 4 or 5.
5 again, right? So it's still on. There have been 9 editions of Resurrection. So in a way, yeah, it's gone on. So whatever. It's still happening. I hope it happens this year also.
This
so,
year,
like they also have a company, what's called Barcode and all that. And these guys are pitching in. It's quite amazing. Good stuff.
It's good stuff.
Can you tell us about some of the bands that existed during that time? Okay, first, since how long have you been involved in the scene? Not just as musicians, but as the audience as well.
Oh, I'll tell you what. I'll start with this. I had I started, I got hooked on to rock and metal since I was like in 8th standard, right? In 1996, I finished my SSC metric and we formed a band. 1997, we guys met up, right? And since then, it's been like having a proper band, or whatever. But if you actually look at the bands which were there at that point in time, it was nothing that would be comparable to the band that we were planning on putting up, right? Because the bands which were there at that point in time were the ones which were covering Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, Metallica, Megadeth, to a very limited extent, Pantera.
And Thor would cover Pantera.
Yeah.
Fucking see, by cover, while we are talking about covers, obviously that in those days the scene was dominated by
covers. Yeah.
And few originals. I mean, that's how the scene evolved. I mean, that's how a lot of people got to know about these bands.
Yeah.
Today you can diss cover bands, and say, oh fuck, they're playing covers, because you are aware of so many other bands existing abroad. But those days, you come to know about these bands by watching these bands cover. Like you hear of Pantera not through internet. When, for example, Thor plays Pantera, Mouth for War, on stage in 1997, you come to know, okay, Pantera exists. I'll get the CD or the tape or somehow I'll get it. Okay, so today you say, oh shit, you're a cover band. I mean, those days, I guess there was a reason why they existed cover bands. And originals, they had originals, maybe 30, 70, but they were there. It was there. So I think there were some other bands. I mean, I guess I started iRock much
before that.
Earlier. I mean, kind of the same age only, but in those days, I guess there was this band called Mortuary. I'm tilted towards metal. I'm still biased towards metal because everyone knows about the rock bands in Bombay. Everyone knows. Obviously, I was a big fan of Rock Machine before the industry. Chuck Review was there. Mayhem was there. Mayhem was one big, kick-ass metal band which really inspired a lot of us. Because they used to do, you name it. I mean, they used to cover this stuff well. They had good originals and stuff. Rust Angels was there. Clever, who released all this FOK1 too. Millennium was there. And if you're talking about Bombay bands, there was a band called as Hellhammer. These were the members before Chakravyuh happened. Like this Paresh and Naresh, these brothers were there in that band, Hellhammer. I mean, not really out and out, but kind of metal. So these were a decent band.
There were some good bands with
Thor was good. Federation.
The scene was like, the bands which were there.
And contemporaries, like you said, Metakix was there. Metakix and Scepter. We all started at the same time. Scepter, Mothers of F. Zero also started. Zero took on to a different platform altogether. Abhor, after us, Abhor also started. Abhor was the second death metal band from Bombay, if you ask me. Those guys were there. DR also started a little bit later. Then that's pretty much it.
The best part about the bands which were there that was that the best part was that everybody thought they were smarter than the other people.
They still think that.
They still do. I mean, as rockers, you've got rock as the state of mind and blah blah blah, and everybody thinks that they're at that state of mind. But then, at that point in time, the competition was between bands who can cover other bands more accurately, which was unfortunate, right? Because there would be a mad rush amongst bands who could cover Metallica to perfection. And there we were playing like the entire show. When Amar was there for Fate was way too different. I mean, there was Angel, which one? Angel Witch.
Yeah, Angel Witch.
Or there was one song which was absolutely amazing. If you actually have to listen to the riff, the opening riff, and the whole song and how it would progress, it was trademark Amar. I mean, if you actually have to look at it. And it was amazing.
Amar was one of the best.
Yeah, I mean, he was the coolest dude around, right? And the kind of stuff that he would come out with was amazing. I mean, Roshan and Hitesh could complement that, right? for whatever reasons, when Amma exited and I entered, right, the same thing happened, right, but at a different level. So the flavor would change, but the band would still remain the same, right? The rhythm section has always been strong from Motorcycle time because Roshan and Hitesh were like the best of friends, and the kind of understanding that they would have as far as bass and drums is concerned, it was like unparalleled. Sometimes I would just feel that I'm just feeling in the rhythm and the melody parts, but actually the song was actually carried on by what they were doing.
Flow when it comes to the the rhythm section and the flow. Like if you listen to Savage Be Here, like it's a guitar driven song. I would still say it's a guitar driven song totally. But if you look at the rhythm section, it just flows.
It was amazing. And see what we had at that point in time when we started off with Motorcycle, we had like a vocalist in Nitin who had a voice unlike anybody else at that point in time, right? He was growling the shit out of.
I was a
anybody.
full-time growler.
He was a full-time growler.
You know, full-time growler in Bombay. And
I remember shows when we would get off stage and we'd have people looking at us and congratulating on the richness of the voice and everything. There was some guy who had quit smoking because Nitin was not smoking and was a vocalist and he was a vocalist too.
Sushil
from Abboud. He had quit smoking because Nitin was not smoking and he wanted to have that growl.
It
was amazing.
I mean, Sushil is that
But we had like a rich fucking voice, right? Amazing rhythm section. We never had a lead guitarist. I was the rhythm guitarist who would just back up as a lead guitarist, right?
You're not into those flashy lead guitars.
But one thing which we would have wanted all throughout would have been a keyboardist who could,
The texture.
who could match our attitude. I mean, the texture could have been worked on, but the attitude was more important. Actually, what was more important having a new member in a band was the attitude. I mean, if that person would not have gelled with us, then we would not even want him around, even if he was like an amazing guitarist or an amazing keyboardist or whatever. I mean, fuck that. I mean, we started all the way from scratch. But the only reason why we hung around together was because we were friends much before we actually became musicians. That kind of shows in the music if you actually listen to it. There are times when we would play live when I would make a mistake or Hitesh would make a mistake or Roshan would make a mistake or Nitin would probably make a mistake or anything of that sort, but we knew how to cover for each other. We were tight.
It's like how I guess even like, an ideal metal band should have is that clan thing,
Yeah, we used to do things together. I mean, we used to literally live out of each other's lives.
Serious funded to each other.
Yeah. I was the most distant out of the rest of them because I was the youngest. But seriously,
guitarists have that kind of. They can zone out and zone in.
They're born
weird because
listening to Joe Satriani.
I'll tell you why, because I've played with so many guitarists. I mean, trust me, I know this. Because they are different. I mean, nothing against them. That's how they are. Because they compose. They are the backbone of the band. You can't deny that for sure. I mean, if there's a drummer can't compose. I mean, unless he's also a guitarist, that means he has to be a guitarist, right? So these guys are a clan of their are a clan of their own. I mean, they have their own mindset. They'll say like, "Fuck, I I really don't want to jam. I really don't want to." You can't do that shit.
I remember times when these guys would go out on extended smoke breaks, and I would sit in the room trying to figure out which would be the next riff.
Right.
There was fuck all that, and he would come around and say, "Oh, try something more chunkier, try something more melodic, or try something this." And God, that was weird. Actually, it's just flashed in the back of my head now.
Oh fuck, that was a tapping solo happening over there. Crazy.
I mean, having a band and pulling it off together has got a lot more to do with the music. I mean, the music just happens. It's more of how you guys gel together. I
Too many constraints.
mean, yeah.
Next question. Melody, it's something
Low mid.
Actually, they explain music stuff.
Yeah, wow, we're good. Melody will be happy. The fucking thing is over now.
I need to get another week.
Musicians are by default considered to be males. But in the rock scene, particularly, there are not too many female musicians.
You know, just covered rock, like metal rock, and
Rock and metal. Rock
in the
and metal.
Bombay scene.
Promising, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a strong lack of female artists.
No, actually, no.
Promising.
Yeah, there is. If you actually look at the numbers, the number of female musicians have been a lot lesser, right? But if you actually look at it, there was this keyboardist of demonic resurrection who was like
God again.
Like,
And there was one
she was
bass.
quite a number.
They were interviewing her also. I guess she's married to Ashwin or something, right? She's Ashwin Malang, let's not go there. Ashwin Dutt?
No. She married the guy from Split Radio or something.
अरे वही तो अश्विन दत्त है ना
No.
इधर काले का है
I think so. Arun Kale? Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure.
Okay, it doesn't matter.
That's not going there. That's not going there. Yeah.
She was Nikita. Yeah. She was a keyboardist who was playing with DR at that point in time. And I know of a couple of
Aditi was there.
Aditi was my classmate. Yeah, how could I forget?
Bassist.
She was a
Vishnu,
bassist
you know
for,
Vishnu Singh from Vishnu's wife.
Yeah.
Aditi.
She was playing bass, and there were a couple of other people also who were like vocalists and guitarists and stuff like that. But then, Bombay scene, not too many chicks who would, take it up as forming a band or something like that. So, I don't know what's the reason behind that, but if you actually look at Bangalore, it would be slightly different because you would have drummers who were like
Couple of drummers.
Yeah.
Sweet and Durga, the Achapana Durga. She used to play for a progressive metal band.
Oh, and it's not that these guys were not good enough. I mean, these guys were fucking rich drummers. I mean, seriously, they had talent.
Yeah.
There was Yasmin who could, smack the shit out of a dead drum kit. But there was Durga also who I got to back. I mean, we have seen a couple of times only.
Quite decent.
Yeah. And she had won some best drummer or some shit like that. But if you actually have to look at it, I mean, it's
Quite technical.
Yeah. If you actually look at it, right, it's got nothing to do with either if you're a guy or a girl. Right? It's just a matter of being having that opportunity to form band.
I think it's a reflection of what happens globally.
Yeah.
Globally also see we have less metal and rock musicians, female musicians. So I guess this follows the same trend. But Bombay really has that abysmally low female. I guess even participants.
Yeah.
If you look at the shows also, there are less females. Maybe now there is more. There are more
But that,
females
I mean,
attending the shows. In
think
the
about
days, there were hardly any. I mean, a select few. We would know them. Like,
Yeah, think about it this way. Like the rock scene is this much, the metal scene is this much. Within the metal scene, the female scene will be this much. It doesn't really make much
You
of a
see, you
difference.
check out some long-haired person and it's like, arey,
Yeah.
What happened to you?
When you guys were on stage, like, what was the expectation of female groups coming to see?
We get balls about that, man. Trust me. We didn't even want any posers. I mean, we didn't even want any rock heads attending our show there. We wanted people who know, and then forget about it. They do not know all the songs and all the bands, but they should be genuine metalheads. And obviously, a show, Thursday night show at Raz in Jew, and obviously if you're a genuine rocker, then only you'll land up.
I'll tell you
No
what.
other way. So we really didn't care about female audience and stuff, honestly.
Frankly, I'll tell you what.
Unless we have found Backstreet Boys or Morty Boys like this.
Morty Boys.
Something like
No,
that.
frankly, if you actually ask me, right,
That was a joke.
all four of us had quite fulfilling love lives.
Love life. What do you mean by that?
It's not love life, but it's like, the stuff that we would get. So as far as when it came to playing the music, it did not matter if we'd get female attention or not. Chances of that happening were quite meager actually. If you actually look at
Maybe
it.
because of that, we were
This
small. We don't care about all that.
Yeah, we were just
if they happened to come, we would have been, okay. Hey, men are men.
No, it's just that when we were on stage, frankly we couldn't care less if women were right in front of us or guys were in front of us. I remember times when we would just jam, right? Even at IIT, there was this time when they had put off the music and they shut off the mixers, so outside people could not hear anything, but we were jamming because we could hear ourselves on the monitors and we were jamming, and the people on the front row cheered us on because they could hear what we were playing. It did not matter.
Just to
And at that point in time,
the scenario was, you have a time limit, right? And I guess apparently you had exceeded the time limit. And they halted you right in the middle of the song. But I guess they continued playing. We finished our song.
And in situations like those, it did not matter if the people in front of you were chicks or guys. It seriously did.
And even we played IIT and all that, no, not to go reach the finals. We knew we'd never reach the finals and stuff. We just went so that at least some guys over there would know that we exist, metal exists. These kind of bands exist in Bombay and they should know about it. That's the reason we played competitions. Otherwise, we really didn't care what really happened over there.
That's really important because we had no misconceptions about getting female attention or getting fame or getting money or anything of that sort. We knew what was in it for us, and we went with that kind of an awareness. I mean, there was no misconception about that. Yeah. We knew that we would have to shell out money from our own pockets. We knew that we'd have to probably work on our forearms. We knew all of that, man.
And we have massive respect for whoever paid, as in who actually paid for your $100 was the entry in Rally. You actually paid for that and you paid for that show. Massive respect for all those guys. All those guys who traveled from Ambernath and watched, came over here, even from locally,
Kanjurmarg, this place, that place, and there were people coming from all across town.
Like places like Kalwara that I've not even heard, actually coming
and paying money to be a part. Be a part of the whole movement, which was actually gathering.
I guess they were also equally responsible. I mean, you might be interviewing bands and all that, but these guys were also scenesters. Like how you, for example, a lot of people didn't play in bands, but they were in the scene. They were associated. They were equally responsible.
They would listen to bands. Even if it was a new band, which would just break into the scene, they would come and watch. They would come and watch and listen.
We did that when we were not a band, and when we were a band, a lot of people did that. I'm sure even now it is happening. That's huge. That's huge.
Just imagine yourself playing with a band, originals which people have not heard, right? And people are just standing there and waiting for that groove to happen. When that song starts grooving, and you see the whole mosh pit happening, that's the hype. It doesn't matter if the guys in the mosh pit are guys or girls. It's seriously, it's beyond that. It's beyond that. It's just that you see bodies just crashing into each other and just enjoying and having a good time. It's like jumping together.
Can you tell us about the music that you guys wrote? That is, where did you get the influences from, to write those kind of stuff? Motorcycle and Fate. And what are your opinions on the religion type of lyrics that were written? Because most of the music at those times, which were famous, like KSI or something like that, were against religion.
Against anti.
Yeah. I'll tell you what.
And even black metal for that.
You know, frankly, I'll tell you what. All four of us, right, were confirmed atheists. Confirmed atheists. We did not believe. We did not believe, and we we did not believe in God or Satan. Right? Our lyrics were topical. Our lyrics were political. Our lyrics were things about reality. We wrote about stuff which mattered, which we saw, which we experienced, right? That made a difference to us, right? It may not have occurred to the people who are actually listening to the music, but frankly, if you ask me, there were songs which we had written, which made sense to us, right? There was Savagely Beheld, there was a Cascade of Smoke, which was
Savagely
crazy.
Beheld, I guess, was about the victims affected by landmines.
Yeah, our lyrics have been more towards.
So the musical direction might have been black metal, but that doesn't mean it was about pagans, the wars versus
Yeah.
and all this kind of stuff. So even actually, whatever, like he's saying, Fate and Waterside, even today, what I'm writing with Sledge also, like we said, our ideologies are the same, might be different bands. Even today, I'm writing after such a long time, my ideologies are the same. Even today, in Vanquish is about the terror attacks which are written. Even with Waterside, even after he quit, even with other people who were there, it was again, it was standing up for a right, like Volatile, it was about situations, you face up to situations, you fight it out, you give it back. There was no fantasy, there was no castles built in the air, and there was no,
Satan's
or maybe
trying to wipe the
goth,
last
even
Santa or something.
exactly.
No,
Not
frankly,
Norwegian goth and all that. Though we used to listen to DSAT, we used to listen to Cannibal, I mean, we love the bands, but we were not buying the Satanism aspect.
Yeah.
No, see, we were, obviously everyone's drawn towards it. But we never had any
occult and all
yeah,
that.
false pretensions about that we were to practice it and do shamanism and
No, it is.
no, not really, man. We might have scared a few guitarists off our back. We were taken by these activities, but that was just a general myth.
Chilling out of the grave.
Yeah, all those kind of stuff. But we
Chicken blood and goat blood. No, the whole point was I don't.
But lyrics were rooted. What's happening? Reality, protest, stand up for your rights. No whining. Okay, we were never whining.
We were zero.
Not like a corn and all that. Oh, sorry, I mean they might be good bands, but we were not really into it. We were like stand up for your rights, and if it's an atrocity, point it out.
Frankly, if you ask me, right, the four of us which formed Morningside were like seriously strong characters. If personality-wise, if you look at it, right, all four of us were like really strong characters, and we were not apologetic about whatever we wrote, right. Other than that, I don't remember any song which we've written with any kind of religious overtone or undertone or anything of that sort.
But spade is spade. I mean, like it's your metal attitude.
Yeah.
Right? We call spade is spade. I mean, that's why. I mean, if I'm saying that Fab today is like totally going against his grain and doing all this thing. Yeah, it is. I mean, we've always been there upfront. Yeah.
And there's
all
not
the
been.
music.
I mean, even apart from the music, if there is something that bothered us, we've spoken about it. I mean, there have been times when we've gone up to Amit Sehgal and told him that the whole scene's up.
Yeah, man.
About it,
Yeah, such RSG, such we gone and told him that.
Gone and told him.
When IIT we used to float around and all that. So like,
He probably would not have even realized that we are part of a band or we stood up for something or anything of that sort. But to us, it made a difference because we believe
wanted
that
to voice it out.
Yeah.
I mean, the band was band lyrics. I mean, these are extensions of your personality, right?
Yeah.
So through lyrics, if we are getting across, expressing our thoughts, that's what we feel. I mean, I guess even today, I would quit a job if I really don't care about it. I mean, fuck off. I mean, that thing.
No, frankly, if you actually look at it has a lot to do with the kind of people that we are. All four of us, we were like.
And I can see a lot of people are drawn to metal because of this, because of this kind of attitude, I'm sure. Most of it, unless you're in there for the trend of it, you listen to it, Korn, Abhi Hai, Lamb of God, and after you're out of college, you forget all that, you go back to whatever your roots were, like Puppy Levy or whatever it is. So a lot of your passengers are there, they are your scenester, trendsters, like how they call it. But for us, even if I'm not really up to date with which bands are releasing CDs today, tomorrow, next month, and all that, but we still, it's about metal. It's still the same,
It's still in the attitude.
Yeah, it's the attitude, I guess. So metal is a way of expressing yourself.
It is. It's very much.
Not too much philosophical, dude. What are you guys doing?
Still not finished.
Tell us something about Sledge, how it started. A brief thing on Sledge.
Sledge, I guess Sledge just happened, but before Sledge, I mean, what happened? I mean, I was totally like 2003 with my third or fourth version of Waterside. We did one gig, I guess it was a 911 gig, September 911. Memory of that, whatever, that was the gig. It was called Moshpit 911. I guess that was a gig over here, and in Pune we did one gig, Evil Crack. And after that gig, again, those guys, one guy, the drummer went, he said, I'm going abroad to pursue SAP and all those. Neeraj was the drummer from next to that. So I said, fuck, I mean, enough. After this, I'm really not going to get a really good drummer, and the guitarist, again, he had this catering stuff to do and all that. And then, I guess, by the time, 2003 also, there was good. I guess, pursuing so then I finally gave myself, dude, I mean, it's really not going to happen. I really can't get musicians again and start all over again. So 2004 went and my career, even I was into the career. And 2005, I had actually taken a break from work. I quit one of these jobs. I said, like, fuck off. Some shit had happened at work. So I said, I was chilling at home. And these guys had issues at home, again, career issues and all that, drinking issues. They said, like, no, I really can't. I'm quitting the band. So they just called me up and said, can you do this show? So I was looking at home and I said, like, why not? So I said, you just come over for a week, we'll jam the song, we'll jam on the songs, you listen to the song meanwhile. And I was just supposed to do the launch gig, which I did. It went off kick out. I mean, I was really shocked that Hyderabad has got, like metal fans, and I mean, they were like all over. It's like, if you're singing here, the guys are all surrounding you. It's just like rap, but an outdoor rap, a smaller outdoor rap. It's kick ass. So it's pretty thrilled. The album launch went off pretty well and stuff. And then they said there were a few more gigs they wanted me to play, and I was quite free those times. So it happened 2005. That's how I got in with Sledge. 2006 was again not really happened. 2006 a lot of gigs happened. And Singapore gig also happened, which is huge. And that's how I'm with Sledge. For me, it works because I'm a vocalist. I'm here. I can work on the songs. They do their regular jams. So whenever there's gigs, I would go a few days earlier, jam with them, and play. So for me, though honestly, Sledge is not the kind of music I would ideally want to play because they're more thrash and old school, old school thrash. But it helps because it's again metal, and I mean I can do stuff and I can play stuff. They get gigs, I mean I get to play. So that's how Sledge happened. But even today, if you ask me if I'm getting musicians in Bombay, if I want to do my own stuff, I'm still game for that. So if any drummers and guitarists are watching this documentary can contact me. But if you're into the extreme metal forms,
you can trust me when I say this because in the last 1 year, at least I can think of 4 times that he's tried to contact me.
I still do.
For new
I still haven't given up. Because I know this. I mean, you heard the stuff, you heard the fake stuff, you hear the other song also. I guess you can play that. I mean, wherever you guys listen to it, shitloads of talent. I know, humanity weighs you down, career stuff weighs you down, but I still feel, we still can come up with a decent album. I mean,
and better than
sit down and jot it down. We not play gigs and tour and all those kind of crap. Forget about that. At least come out with that.
I think we put somewhere around 15 years together. I mean, regardless we've been in touch or not, if we have to like pull off some shit, I think we can pull it off just because we know each other pretty well.
That was so me. Even today we can get along and we can just pull off this stuff. But again, for whatever reasons,
time is a constraint. But never mind that. I mean, we can work around that.
Can we see a redux of what said and did happening? Even if not with the same people.
I don't see that happening. I don't see that happening. See, I'll tell you frankly, because a band is a band because of people who make it, right? once you have new members coming in, you can have the same name, but you will not have the same flavor. The personality of the people who are actually making that band is very important in the kind of music that comes across. If you listen to, let me give you an example, very lucid example. Okay, listen to 2 albums of Death, right? Symbolic, right, and Individual Thought Pattern. You'll see the difference, right? It's quite simple because the members are not the same. The vocalist is the same, the guitarist is the same, right? But the members are different. The sound is different.
Output, combined output.
The
when
combined
everyone gets
out,
together.
yeah, the combined output is different. If you look at Slayer, right, Paul Bostad is different than Dave Lombardo. You can make out that difference. It's the same band. 90% of the members are the same, right? But the sound is different. So if you want the same music, right, the same attitude, the same sound, the same everything, you can't do it with different musicians. That's what I feel. You know, I can tell you this because we've literally grown up together. Nitin, I, Roshan, Hitesh, we've grown up together. We've known each other even before we were musicians, right? And if we had to adjust with a new person, we could do that.
Well, the output would be something else.
Output would be something
And
else.
plus, a lot of time has also, passed. So, you have your newer influences coming in,
Yeah.
and all those things show. So, obviously, a different version can happen, but not,
Not
recreate
the stuff that
you can't recreate the past.
the stuff which was there.
Thank you all so very much. Thank you.
I hope we've not bored the shit out of you guys.
At least that. These guys are like involved in that work, na? So, Melvin is good. I'm telling you, he's good.
But so this is too much of fucking nostalgia.
Yeah.
It's like fucking we used to do A, B, C, D. Fucking 10 years down the line, some kid will be coming to them and telling them, "Arey, how did you pull this shit off?" And these guys will be going gaga about it. And
I had that. What is this camera called? Any camera you all had, you know?
guess what?
Like that heavy metal camera, like this camera would be like this, na? Like you come with a button. Fuck, you used to carry that thing and shoot.
And those kinds, those kids would be like, okay, yeah, okay.
You know, there's a section for bloopers as well as stuff like that. You know,
If I see you putting this shit on that, your ass is mine, dude.
Oh yes, that's also recorded. Then we'll make a new version, when how the camera crew got attacked. They're really violent.
no, there's also another section in which we'll be putting the troubles that we faced during this.
Fuck, it'll be good fun.
Because we
the shit that we've gone through to
I'm
make
sure,
this.
man. I'm sure.
I seriously think that,
Especially this
I-
Ganpati shit also which we faced. Like resurgent shit happening, That also be a bloopers,
Yeah,
man.
that's there. That will be there.
what I feel is
So
what
what
you
was
guys
it?
are doing,
Pani.
what you guys are doing is equivalent of what we guys were trying to do. And I can relate to that because you know what? You're working against the tide, right? There is no metal scene to speak of, there's no rock scene to speak of in Bombay as of now. I mean, you have like the Ikaduka shows which happen, some bands where kids, they just dig some band, they want to sound like a particular band and they just pull some shit together. But there's no sustainable.
This is all I can feed you. Guys.
There's no sustainable rock or metal scene that is happening. And what you guys are trying to do is trying to catch glimpses of what was there in the past and try and relate to what is there right now.
Ideally, you know what? I'd like to follow this documentary after the second one purely on the history. Purely on the history. The early 90s.
See, because what global metal and headbangers journey has done, man, it's like awesome if you watch them.
The family.
Fucking inspiring. Every time I lose it, I'll watch it once again. I say, fuck me. और कुछ करेंगे यार और एक album या और एक ये or something. It is inspiring.
Each time I go to a show, like the last time I went to IROC, right? I remember watching Brute Force and thinking that today I'll go back home, I'll pull out my guitar, dust it, connect my processor, connect my amps, and start jamming. I'll come up with new stuff, right? I do that. The next day, the reality hits me that I have to get back to work at 9 in the morning and do all the ABC, XYZ, whatever stuff, and then that dies down, right?
But you can still
if,
do it.
yeah, but then if I were me about 10 years back, I would not give a shit about what tomorrow has tomorrow has in store for me, but I would just jam. I remember times when I would go to Kalpi's house. Kalpi was the drummer for Mothers of Earth. He was in my college. I'm not really sure what was that. So we would pick up beers, go to his place. He'd have his band members' equipment lying around. We just jam. I used to stay at his house for about 3 or 4 days, call up home and tell them that I'm at Kalpi's house and wear the same underwear, wash it, and do all sorts of rubbish. But I remember all of that.
I guess that's what is missing, as in, not missing, as in when you grow older and you have your other responsibilities and all that, that's what you really can't do. Then songwriting and production and all this can become a little, okay, this is the time period you have, you got to finish it in that, you got to do all those things in that.
Another problem
so maybe
is
that also affects your creativity or your output, but then
another problem is
that's
you can't wear the same underwear for 3 days in a row.
These days you can't.
I get uncomfortable.
Global warming.
Global warming. I think it should be like global warming.
Scrotum warming.
Scrotum warming.
No,
These days your hygiene sense is increased. That is, yeah.
You become more paranoid, you become more OCD.
That's because your girlfriend complained twice. She said, fucker, what are you passing on to me? I guess that's the reason. Otherwise, earlier, because there was no sex, so that's fair, no?
I'm out of this conversation.
See, I hit the wrong nerve over there.
This part that you just told, that you just said about, the time that you had, like you have a particular time to sit and record stuff.
Absolutely.
That's not there existing in the, outside India, that is.
True.
Even now, when you go to a studio, you have a fixed time. That is, you have 1 hour or 2 hours to sit and record.
Absolutely.
But check Metallica out. When they did Black Album or any other of their albums, they were in the studio for like days.
That's a full-time career versus a part-time. Not even a part-time. I would say like a weekend warrior. Like I think those who saw weekend warrior.
The fact remains that you're talking about Metallica and Megadeth here. These are the biggest bands. They've made it big because they've gone pure, strongly mainstream.
Yeah.
But then the other bands whose beast like the Carcass, Morbid, Death, for example, they still couldn't learn out of it. They still couldn't make the living. Chuck Schuldiner is a dead example of
When
it.
he had cancer, even that decapitated guy who's, the people are sending out funds to him, he's still recovering, the vocalist, the drummer died. It's still no.
But I would,
Guys are not really making living out of it. So that's why you need, it's not an excuse, you need a day job. You need to survive, right? And this city, Bombay, is an expensive city.
And
You all know it.
frankly, if you look at it, there's this euthanasia video which has, a Megadeth setting up a recording studio and then recording the whole album, right? Come to think of it, you can't afford a guitar. Come to think of it, you can't even afford a guitar. For reason one, for a kid who's like in 11th standard or 12th standard, right? Just because he does not have that kind of money. You can't compare apples with oranges. The scene that is there in the West is not is not the scene that you would have in India.
You should check out now. There's a black metal band called 1833 AD from Delhi.
Delhi come
Yeah, Delhi. Amazing band.
Delhi, has always been, when we actually try to be regional about stuff, right? We always have that amount of respect for people who come from other places, rather than respect the people who are within our own territory. It's like, a canzona
would be like a amazing band, regardless of what shit they would play, just because they're from Delhi, right? But there were bands within our city which were absolutely rocking, which would come across as some serious fucking competition to the bands from Delhi or Bangalore or anywhere else, but we would not recognize it. You know, that's unfortunate.
That used to happen with this band called Nightmare and Street.
Oh fuck, they were amazing, man. They're Delhi wala, right?
Really, man.
Oh fuck, they used to play covers from hell, cut to cut, man. They used to play exact. उसका ड्रमर भी मादरचोद था एक
नहीं
क्या बड़ा
वो सवाल में फ्लाइट वाइट से आते थे गीत के लिए
ओ या
वो समय में फ्लाइट से
हाँ वो सवाल में फ्लाइट का 10,000 का टिकट होता था Bichas, Delhi bands in those days, na? Like Bombay bands were always garieb, especially metal bands. You've seen.
oh yeah,
There's a reason. Again, if we have time, we'll discuss one day. There's a reason why metal and there's a strata thing which also happens. Because when you're rich, you listen to techno, partying, sharting. मेरे को कहाँ time मिलता है? Angst किधर से आएगा? You loaded, man. No, so metal is about that. So very less band from South Bombay से बता ना metal band में बता एक phenomenon है. Even if you look
रोजमेरी
metal, hey, new no Rosemary and new metal है ना?
रोजमेरी मान
They're psychedelic rock. They are not metal.
Exactly. You can't name. You won't. I'll tell you. It's a suburban phenomenon. उसका भी reason है यार. वो train में जाएगा धक्का होगा आएगा एक अलग angle होता है.
Yeah.
You know that? Telling you. So that's also a reason. So Delhi bands, na, these guys used to be like rich fuckers. They used to have what equipment they used to have.
oh fuck, when we used to
They loaded, yeah. वो बंगलों में jam करते हैं एकदम सबका रहता है. They have but अपना थोड़ा
I remember the
Bombay
time
में at least Bombay I'm not saying money नहीं है. मतलब metal heads are like तुमने कहीं चलता.
yeah, you know, I remember this time when we were at Strawberry Fields, Bangalore National Law School, right? हम लोग ने चद्दर वद्दर बिछाया हुआ था. अमर का गिटार था और मेरा गिटार था, and we had opened up the stuff and we were trying to align stuff and doing shit on that, and we could watch the rest of the bands, especially from like Northeast and you know, Delhi bands and stuff. Their guitars were fucking shining, man. It was like you could look at the guitar and तेरा बाल आप बना सकते हो. And we were fucking struggling with our intonation, this, that, and all.
This one thing I mean I've personally noticed that not if you Bombay में it's been a even PDB yeah the way it started they used to jam वो you know slums के बाजू में jam हम करते थे एक time पे bulb लगा के और because for us Bombay is an expensive city yeah. All these rich fuckers I've never seen them get into metal they do your rock shiny events and all that but once I like something relevant and all that you know, like you'll have to South Bombay you know South Bombay band you know like Happy Trippy
Yeah,
yeah,
another trend is fucking bassists and guitarists who would get guitars made from Peter Pereira and Alberto's, which would look cool, but it would not be the actual Jackson and actual ESPs and shit like that.
These
They
days
would be like,
available.
Yeah.
So these people are stocking all this stuff. So.
earlier what used to happen was some guy would come from abroad and he'd pick up some guitar and some shit like that, like Dimebag or Washburn, who this fucker had. Ranjan had.
हमारा गिटार उसके पास
हाँ उसके पास था. That was crazy stuff.
That is one most memorable gig you guys had.
Whether it was being backstage or front stage or on stage,
The most memorable gig.
or something that you always will remember from a show, or something that you will always remember.
That has to be IIT, man.
IIT first gig
that I got played. You know, the best part of you can't compare it because that day was the most horrible day. Firstly, we had loaded all our equipment on one bloody Maruti 800 which broke down on the way. Then we hopped into rickshaws and we reached there. We registered ourselves. We waited for about 4 or 5 hours for our turn to come up. And then finally when our turn came up, we went on stage and even while we were getting ready to do the sound check, we saw a huge crowd running from the seating arrangement that they have, running down and coming to the barricades, and we had no idea that people would have
It's only our second gig.
yeah, and we were not expecting that kind of an overwhelming response. And that's when we played the awesome ass songs that we had prepared at that time, and we saw fucking mosh pit happening.
First time a proper genuine mosh happening, and
Yeah.
violent, and it's actually breaking barricades kind of stuff, and IIT organizers shitting their pants, which is fun. Well, that was something. Yeah.
That was incredible. That was a
Bad. We remember from Cryptos, Theory, and all that in the mosh pit and enjoying it, and later meeting us, and
yeah. I
We
remember
were
the
the
time
same.
when
It was
I was
awesome.
like picking up my my processor and the adapter and everything, and those guys were like really dying to know exactly where we are. I mean, where we guys are from, and
they didn't even know we were a Bombay band. I mean,
they came to know. But it was amazing. I mean, that was the first gig, and that was probably the best gig because I don't know. It's not just the sentimental value. It's the stuff that the response that we saw from the people. It was
time, the place.
too damn overwhelming. Yeah.
Can you, as in from that show, what happened next? Like, who went
What happened next?
the finals and like?
Oh, okay. The finals. I'll tell you what. I have very little memory of who actually reached the finals and all that jazz. Because what I remember, actually, what I remember and what actually matters is by the time we got off stage, we had like these bands from Bangalore and Chennai who were shaking hands with us behind stage and inviting us to their room after to have a few drinks and to smoke up or whatever.
The community thing which is
Yeah.
happening, and the
And
community thing.
We were least bothered if we.
Yeah.
I mean, we had no bones about us getting selected or whatever.
We knew that.
We knew that.
So we weren't even bothered.
So we were not even bothered. So what we did was we went straight into their room and we were chilling out over there the whole night. The next night also, and that's it. I mean, nobody gave a rat's ass about.
Thor got selected.
I think so.
for the
Naked
finals,
was
yeah,
there.
Naked.
Zero was there, I guess.
Yeah, these guys got selected. We don't even know who won and all that.
I mean,
for us,
it didn't
for us,
make
the whole idea was,
Yeah.
there's a death metal band which exists in Bombay, and they have played at IIT
Yeah.
Bombay. That was the whole.
The whole idea was to let people know that we existed, and
And to get that kind of response was like even much more better.
yeah, that was the whole idea. I mean, we were not in it for the winning. I mean, we could not have won in any case.
Yeah.
I mean, even musically, we were not that mature to have won anything.
It's an attitude, go out, perform,
Yeah.
play.
But
And
we
we
had-
exist. We as a scene exist. There are fans, there's a clan.
Yeah,
All of us do exist. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
we just wanted to get the
That
people, get the people who listen to our kind of stuff to one side of the whole crowd.
absolutely.
Just concentrate them there and tell them that what we guys exist. Looking
And I'm so
forward.
glad that clan has grown today and today they form the sizable chunk.
Yeah.
They are the more passionate because metal fans have always been passionate and they would attend shows. They would support the bands. I mean, they're not that fickle as the other fans out. I would probably say that. And that clan has grown today. It's much more huge, much more bigger.
That was crazy. I mean, think about it from my point of view. Probably I was as old as you were, or maybe younger. I would have been what, 18, 19? You guys would have been the same age. And to see fucking 100 odd people going mad right in front of you, that's quite a bit.
One of the best
Quite a
things.
bit.
That in those times, live wire was what, 4 to 4 sort of thing? Like it was all night,
No, not really. The year before that was the time when the dean was absolutely upset about the fact that Parikrama was doing about Ek Ek Ghante Ka song out of whatever songs that they were playing. They were playing till 4 in the morning.
Yeah. But earlier LMs used to happen whole night and stuff.
Yeah.
I still remember earlier one of the LMs
So
was
this was earlier in your time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I mean, it's not like 98 we were a band, but from 93 to 98 we were the audience also. So we used to go, I used to go to all IITs there. We
used to watch
used to go and sit over there and all night.
Gurtus and fucking Indian Oceans and
These
all
Millenniums
sorts
and
of
Rusty
bands,
and all those
Millenniums, everything. Yeah.
It was
It's
quite
been through
something.
all of that shit.
There used to be some funny bands from Pune also, you know, like overnight bands which were just made for.
Oh yeah, some uncle with a ponytail with a French beard who would try to pull off the doors.
Yeah, and we would like take like games also.
That's our uncle singing.
All those kind of crazy shit used to happen.
Because when we were told about this, that it used to happen overnight, that's something which has never happened after.
Obviously, because this was a pre-10 o'clock rule which happened, you know.
Yeah.
And before that, there was a 12 o'clock rule, you know. So this is pre all that, and yeah, there were those times when things would go on.
Yeah.
IIT is their own secluded place. I don't think so. Why there should be an issue. I mean, there's no civilization is far away.
Yeah.
OITs used to have their own charm, and it's just spend the whole night over there. People used to dope. They would just chill out over
there's
there.
a lot of
Scare watchmen and milk guys in the night growl and you should do
and
that.
also the chinkos. The chinkos were like active the whole night.
Yeah.
And even now, if you go there, right, there's this canteen called Chinkos, which is behind that.
It's still there. We haven't gone
it's
there.
still there. Yeah, no, it would be there. Right, they used to have like some ridiculous American chop suey, which was absolutely ridiculous. But then
What?
Chinkos.
Where? In IIT?
I don't know if it's still
Behind
there.
the venue.
Should be
Behind the venue as in
OIT के पीछे.
OIT के पीछे as in when you're going from main gate towards OIT does
I
come
think
on
the
that
Raj ka house ka Chinkos, like there's a Chinese.
Chinkos.
Yeah, Chinese thing. It's a terrace. Terrace
Yeah,
पे
it's like
terrace पे भी
canteen.
बैठ सकते हो, अंदर कैंटीन में भी बैठ
और
सकते हो.
पहले क्या होता था मालूम क्या? They used to sell
Fuck
cigarettes.
all Chinese food, but
All
open the
Chinese
whole
food,
night.
but it used to be open till
We used to
morning.
sit with pentagram with guys would sit यहाँ पे mayhem guys and we would sit over here. We'll obviously be the metal guys.
Trying to be smart and all
The
that.
t-shirt checking out would happen, you know. That used to be a big trend.
And then
the tech t-shirt, you know.
And then there would be like
Original
cigarettes
like-
being sold inside. Then there would be some campfire happening behind where the
Yeah.
sissies would go and play Lenny Kravitz and all that.
And we used to run on the streets. I remember this. We used to walk on the streets. Because it was fun walking over there in the middle of the night, 5 a.m. in the morning and all that. And these milk वाले अपना दूध वाले लोग लेते हैं ना सुबह निकलते हैं वहाँ पे. So we used to growl like, oh, and all that. Scare the
Oh,
shit out of them.
I remember that
Used to do that.
time when we had like when we did not have a band, right? We had gone there to watch the whole
Ellens,
show and
yeah.
Ellens and the show and everything. And we got out of that place around about 5:30 or something odd.
That's when the first
Yeah.
bus and train start.
Yeah.
That's when you get
And we had taken some lift from some truckwala who had dropped us till National Park or some shit like that.
Okay.
It was quite weird. And we've done all sorts of shit. Which is quite amazing. I mean,
Ericsson charger.
Oh man. Okay.
the IIT, Rang Bhavan and RAIT, these have been the places where we've kind of seen a good part of our growing up. Right?
RIT was another amazing trip we used to make every year. Yeah, expose it. Good day, okay, pay it. So RIT was fun, man. You know, going all the way to fucking Nerul, right? LP, somewhere there over there.
There used to be times when we would spend the night at the
Station, another amazing station. They're super sexy stations compared to us.
It was
It's all rockers lying over there.
Yeah, you'd
Parade
see
on the station. That was some
lecturers,
sight,
rockers just lying there on the station, smoking up, chilling out, lying around. As if it was like
Black
your
t-shirt,
father's,
just see your
grandfather's fucking property or something of that sort. You know?
This is your Vashi
It's just
station.
chilling out, man. And
Good fun.
it actually, it was quite unbelievable.
I think that's the thing that at your clan and there's so many people like us, you know,
Yeah.
interact and it's fun.
And then RIT, the ground was like fucking pathetic, man. It was pathetic, but you'd see the maximum amount of people from, Navi Mumbai just hanging around there. And we used to go all the way from Borivali to there.
That's like- We played also, no? Once
We
over
played
there.
also.
When was the last time that you've been to a live
Live wire?
Or any game, any proper metal game.
Yeah.
Live wire was
Any metal,
Yeah, I was just there the other day. Babayanak bought album launch.
I was.
I was sitting nicely for a gig. For a change.
The last
Yeah.
live wire I had been to was 2005 or something. No. You know what?
Exactly, I don't know.
नहीं उसके बाद में Hey, after that, I had gone with some of my colleagues and all that jazz, and we had gone there and did some informals and everything.
Okay.
It was embarrassing. But the last rock show or metal,
Wesley was worried over it. Girlfriend's girlfriend.
the last show which you could call a show was IIT. No, IIT. IROC 2 years back or something. But, oh no, last year.
See when?
Yeah, last year I was there.
You went on the other guy. I always go for Ellen's and amateur night. I never go for pro nights.
I was there last year at Chitrakoot.
You must have went for pro nights. I know Chirag and all those guys wanted to.
No, I went with, who, on the first day I went with some chick, and the second day I went with some bunch of loonies. Pathetic dude. It was not even as if I've gone to a show. Sick. I remember the time when we used to go to Rangbhavan. Fuck, that was amazing. Because we'd start off at Mondi's or we'd end up at Mondi's or anything of, any combination. Yeah. But then that was wild, yeah. We'd walk back to Marine Lines or Churchgate after the show, and then we'd come back to Borivali, then we'd give birthday bombs to Roshan.
His birthday used to happen. I think my worst, concert or metal concert going experience was last year's Resurrection. I called all these fuckers up. Every one of them. No one was willing to come. Then I went for the show alone. I saw the show alone. I interacted with whoever. I knew Mindslayer, all these guys and all that. But the whole show alone. Okay, अकेला देख रहा था. That's when I realized, fuck, I used to really watch a show alone, dude. You need people around.
Now you won't be.
Now I know some scenesters. Because all the people I know, they were playing. From the crowd, except for Fali on sound, and maybe Deepthi was there from Rolling Stones. She was there.
He was there,
Yeah.
Yeah.
How
we were shooting Resurrection.
I almost hired Deepthi at Rolling Stones.
So, you guys are.
Deepthi had done an article on us and for RSJ she had done on.
I said when she used to like.
She had done on the similar stuff like death metal evolution and stuff.
What? She's Sai's girlfriend.
She still is? No.
Demon
I know that for sure.
So that's how I know her. She called me up and was writing some stuff.
Demon has a girlfriend?
That goes in the documentary. That goes in the documentary.
I used to pull his cheeks, man.
What was that all about? Like, why did you pick on him?
Okay, let's see.
He's being a good journalist. He's like needling you with it. Angle marks.
I'll tell you what. Gossip. Demon was a very passionate guy about metal. Right? He's always been that, and he was.
But those days he was raw, I guess.
He was raw. Agreed. But then he was the youngest amongst all of us. Right? He was like a roly-poly kid and everything. A lot of people didn't take him seriously, but then
This is my World of Sadness day, okay? When he composed that world famous number, you heard it? This is my World of Sadness.
Yeah.
So those days it was a great effort, but it was
Yeah, that's the first.
But then
you guys have to hear it.
Yeah.
If you guys
Didn't see them.
DR's first album.
Mine is the one album.
Yeah.
I was just
The album name is Demon Sealer.
So just check it out. This is my World of Sadness.
regardless of that,
That era, is the youngest, coming back,
regardless of the quality of music and over the years he would grow, and I'm sure the stuff that he's making right now is damn mature. But he was the youngest amongst us. Yeah, it's like you're just picking on the youngest of brothers or whatever. Yeah. And he was like the roly-poly kind, the oh don't trouble me type.
Yeah.
And we used to like.
So I guess he was a little protected then, obviously, Jew kid and stuff like that. So,
Yeah. He seemed like the typical good boy turn
yeah,
into
from a good
metalhead
school.
or
Yeah, from school. Like, suddenly turning into like maturing and becoming that metalhead. So there's in that phase.
And with no apologies, we were like biggest nastiest assholes.
Yeah.
So he was just in bad company. Yeah. I mean, even if it was someone else, you would have picked on him also.
Yeah, we used to regularly do
I mean, Timir was there, fucking wearing that mask and fucking scaring the shit out of that kid. We were there making him sing
I
stuff.
was not there for this thing.
What was this?
No, this was in Bangalore, but
Property fields.
just the usual ragging and all that. Yes, but you know, he was a good sport. If you actually have to look at Demon and how he's grown,
Amazing.
you know, he's
I mean, after Netflix and all that, I mean, even see the record, just the recording thing which he started and all that, and Resurrection, he's kept the scene alive. I feel in Bombay, he's the man.
yeah.
I even recorded a song with him for a feeling that.
Yeah, we could ridicule
Abortion. And that's my vocals. Mark, you guys don't know your metal.
No, I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't
but frankly, you know what? You can.
What?
Party sucks.
Yeah. That recorded it. Not your 5 ways to murder and all that crap. The other stuff.
Frankly,
ask you for Anaconda for God's sake.
नहीं उसके पहले
He's a Hollywood track.
Yeah.
This is the first patent that.
Okay.
Not that rascal all that. That is.
no, frankly, if you ask me, right, you can ridicule whoever you want to in the metal scene because the scene is too small, right? But then
I'm pally with most of them. Yeah, I mean, everyone knew everyone.
yeah, I mean, everybody has their role to play. I mean, be it Timir, Zombie, Demon, Roshan, Nitin, Hitesh, or anybody else. I mean, Aniket or anyone else. I mean, if you did not have any of these guys around, the whole scene would not have been the same, right? I'm sure it's the same right now. I mean, whatever bands are there, I'm not really
Like
sure.
you said, Pradeep,
Yeah.
has inspired so many.
Yeah, I don't know
you see
what are the
that.
bands which are right now there, but if you take any of the characters out of the picture, the whole picture would have, would go for a toss or whatever, right? So it's the characters who make these bands, and it's these bands which make the scene worthwhile, right? So that's what is important. The richness of the people who actually make the scene. That's very important. If you have some really idiotic people trying to make music, then you'll have an idiotic scene. But if you have some good, rich, thinking people, then you'd have a rich, good, excellent scene. That shows.
Till now, we have been talking most about metal.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what was going on across on the rock scene as well during that time? Who were the basic organizers and how were the shows happening?
See, I'll tell you what. All throughout that we've been around, right? Metal was never given the mainstream status, right?
Yeah.
So it would always be the rock scene which would have one or two metal bands, which would have one or two metal songs which they would cover from one or two metal significant bands in the global arena, right?
I think it was mainly dominated by Pentagram.
It was mainly dominated
Mostly
by Pentagram,
rock scene.
and rightly so because they had their own songs. They had their own
used to
songs.
play in Raj, right? Pentagram used to have.
Oh, that was way too long back. I mean, yeah. I mean, they used to do
So
some.
they would get paid gigs, yeah. They would get festivals and stuff, right?
So they still do.
With all due respect,
so they don't need to play Raz. I mean, why would you organize a show on your own at Raz? Why would you play that?
forget about that. I mean, think about the other bands which were there apart from Pentagram. There was Spirals, there was Chakravyuh, there was
Freedom.
Freedom was there. Yeah, but then Freedom was way too later. I mean, you're talking about this guy, right? Vidya and Chandresh. That was much later. But then, if you actually look at the whole rock scene across India, also
Zero
was
picked up. Every
from
year they were.
yeah. But then Zero was from our time,
Yeah.
right? The time before us was like Chakravyuh and the rest of the gang.
Chakravyuh was there. Name was there. Name was one band which would get decent gigs. But again, would not get festivals and such. They would reach finals and all.
Yeah.
Brahma was there, yeah. Brahma
Brahma
was
was there, but that's
infamous.
But that's again metal, right? What I was.
So this was the scene, yeah, rock, I mean, Pentagram and
I remember
Major or something.
Pentagram playing Pantera.
That was with the metal wave.
Unbroken or some shit,
stuff
right?
right. So metal has see, Bombay is always, if you honestly ask me, it's always been a metal scene. Yeah, I mean that's been the main after rock machine industry, Pentagram. You name me the biggest Bombay rock band. You guys name it. I mean live band. There hasn't exactly. That itself means it's been a metal scene. There has been
Yeah,
a
but then parallel to
and it's
that,
rock. I mean, metal is the extreme form of rock. Right? I mean,
Because
the distinction.
what I've understood is like this is what I've heard. Okay, this is what I've heard. Most of the rock bands or these so-called rock or the commercial rock bands used to get chances only to play, iRock and places like that. They didn't have a Hard Rock Cafe or any place at that time. So that's when NOE.com started. That is the Rishu Singh's company. He started Stupidities and stuff like that for the alternative and the punk bands and stuff like that.
that's a very recent phenomenon.
That's
If you're talking about Rishu,
that's like 4 years back.
That's-
But I'm talking about, was there any scene for such kind of bands before? Like
As a community, they might not have been united as such, or maybe like Rishu's effort happened later. Earlier, maybe they were not doing that.
I'll tell you what, there's a slight difference between that. If you're looking at rock bands and if you're looking at alternative bands, right? Rishu and his company, I'm not very particularly familiar with the kind of work that they're doing, but there seems like stuff which is more towards the alternative side.
yeah,
Right.
they wanted it to be.
It's not the mainstream rock that you're talking about.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Mainstream rock has been a motherless child for a very long time. The only stuff that they've had were the IROCs, the not just jazz by the way, whatever, or Ikaduka, one or two places where they would.
On festivals they would get, right? They would
Yeah.
get festivals.
Yeah, they would get their due in the festivals or whatever. They would be the ones who would reach the finals or whatever. Right? During that scene happening, right, metal was not even close to what rock used to get. Right? That's where we tried to make a difference by setting up Death Fest. Right? Rishu would have done the same thing with
Or
alternative.
alternative.
But I don't think there was
Before that,
anything done for rock. Just pure,
Bombay rock is
garden variety rock, which
BRA has been around.
yeah, BRA has been around.
Practically they've done stuff, but yeah, that's as far as we know.
I mean, frankly, I don't think we'd be able to answer that question very clearly also because we've been metalheads all our lives. I mean, even now, we may listen to like Dave Matthews Band, but after a while we switch on to Carcass. If there is a new album, we would want to listen to it. It's just that. I mean, it's just a choice that we make. So,
I think I'm zero. I mean, for me, if you ask me,
Frankly,
these were the bands.
yeah, I mean, there were bands like even in retrospect or something, some lava band or other.
And they were not consistent.
They were not consistent, but that scene has been
Like
around.
Agni would come from Pune and play away.
Yeah.
Like RAIT, Agni would be a headliner.
Yeah.
Why? Because industry Pentagram, I mean, Agni was bigger than Pentagram, so they would come. So AK or Parikrama would come from Delhi and headline over here. So Bombay, they were not big marquee rock bands as such.
And there is a bias that whatever stuff comes from north is good, right? So if we
I mean,
would
it's
see,
an exotic.
yeah, it's
kind
like
of, you don't
there
know
is a
certain
band
things.
from northeast coming in, they're like stand as being good,
Yeah.
regardless if they're good or not. I mean, there are bands from northeast which are awesome, like really awesome. There are bands from Delhi which are absolutely awesome, right? But that's where most of the rock scene would happen, and a lot of rock bands would come here, and all that we would see over here is the best bands which would travel all the way from here. I mean, from there. I mean, there would be a lot of lousy bands over there which we would not be exposed to, but whatever bands which would come to Bombay, from there would be the good ones, right? And we'd have this whole idea about, North is all about classic rock and pure rock and stuff. South is all about metal and this and that. Bombay is like fucked up. we do all weird stuff in electronica, this, that, and all. So most of that is like just mental biases. I mean, you'll find bands which are doing cutting edge stuff which you can't put in any genre if you actually had to put it. But that goes absolutely unrecognized, and that's very unfortunate. What you need is to recognize bands which have their own sound, regardless if they fall into the genre of metal, rock, or funk, or jazz, or whatever. That kind of flexibility or that kind of maturity we need in the metal or the rock scene. I mean, that's desperately required.
In in learning music, that you guys have learned guitar and stuff, right? So was it like completely your own self-taught, or did you guys have any formal training or something like that?
I'll tell you what, when we started the band, right, I had a guitar, an acoustic guitar, which was a Gibson, which had 2 strings on it, right? Hitesh did not have a drum kit when he started playing the drums. Roshan did not have a bass guitar when he started playing the bass. Nitin did not have a mic when he started singing. So, I'll tell you how I learned the guitar. I used to go to my school and learn guitar, like playing chords and everything, which did not take me anywhere. Then there was this lead guitarist who used to, Neville. He was part of our band for some brief period of time. I used to go to his house, bunk college, and sit at his house, and he would teach me whatever he would know. The fees that I would pay him was half a packet of Bada Foursquare or Tharreka one Pawa, right? That was the fees. That went on for about a year. But beyond that, whatever we've learned, right? If you take Amar, right, or Roshan, or me, beyond which, beyond the stuff where we actually started making music, we've taught our own selves. Especially Amar and Roshan. Like Hitesh learned from Avi, I learned from here and there, and as many people as I could. But Roshan started from scratch and he started playing bass on his own. Amar did the same thing. He learned from friends here and there and of the stuff that he would check out online or whatever. But learning on your own is far better than learning from a teacher. If you actually ask me, because you're not conditioned to think in a particular manner. You go with the instinct that you have. That kind of adds to your music. That's what I feel.
Yeah. You have a lot of people screw around. I will.
This is beer, vodka, and
mixer हो गया देखो. Mixologist.
How long has it been?
बचपन की याद दिला दी.
How long has it been since you've done that?
This,
Actually, it keeps going.
it's been a while. It's been a while. No, I'll tell you, dude, it's been a while. I remember when we were in college.
No, that's सुधर गया है.
I swear, man, I've become an uncle, dude. I'm pushing daisy. I'm telling you, I'm hitting 30 in
You
October.
need to meet us more often.
People yourself, you piece of shit.
मैं साले तो ये दारू किसने? All from in-house collection है.
Oh, but you know what? There was this time in college when there was this gang in nationals where we had gone ghost hunting to somebody's farmhouse in Panvel.
Ghost hunting.
Ghost hunting, right? Somebody's brother had gotten married and had gone to fucking for a honeymoon or some shit like that to some farmhouse, which was a row house, and somebody had committed suicide in the next block or some shit like that, and they heard like vessels falling off, null and all going on. So what we did was like the entire gang picked up booze, picked up food. We went and spent like one whole night at Panvel farmhouse. Guess what we were doing? We were playing fucking, we were playing Led Zeppelin and those, and we were playing Kanda 40, man. That shit when you hold that and somebody jumps. We were playing that, somebody jumps.
Fuck. So the ghost said like, fuck, let's move
Food
here.
देख के परेशान हो गया लेकिन अब हिंचो ये क्या हो रहा है इधर Shoot, psycho look. Fuck, it was ugly as shit, man. I still have photographs to that trip.
I think you should really get pictures of you guys.
Those are all.
We have.
Not those ones.
Oh, okay. You want the band picks?
Yeah.
We have.
I think have quite.
I'm 30 kilos lighter than those photographs.
I think I've got.
He's like this one. He has longer hair. This long hair.
Yeah.
That's it.
Picture shows.
But otherwise, physique wise, ऐसी है also.
No, I think I have plenty of pics. I mean, there are quite a few pics which are in hard copy, which we probably could, scan and whatever. Plenty of pics here. We've got all of our time together, like full as a band, pretty well documented. There's quite a bit which I think we should have recorded when we had the chance to, but we've got some good tidbits which you could probably use. Right now, at this point in our lives, right, what we need to do is something that is cutting edge, that is far more, different in identity-wise of the music. See, if we had to form a band, we could have done that anyway. I mean, it does not. If we had to actually form a metal band, right, it will hardly take any effort because we know enough musicians who we can put together and form a band, right? But right now, the search is not for that. The search is for an identity, a kind of sound that would be different from any other band anywhere in the world. Unless it's something of that sort, it's not worth pursuing. See, if you have a sound of your own which is different from anything anywhere else in the world, right, that is something worth pursuing. If it's not anything, if it's something lesser than that, then why waste time? I mean, you've been through the band, the usual grind, you've had the band, you've formed stuff, you've done all of that. Reliving the past is not exactly moving forward.
But Nitin, I would slightly differ is like I'm still ready to experiment. I mean, I'm game. That's the reason I did Sledge,
Yeah.
I said, what the hell? I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, let me play with them, right? Let me see what happens. So even today, I'm ready to, there's a bunch of guys, because I need to, I really like, what I like is even more than recording is playing live.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's difficult to do, you won't be getting gigs there, when you form a band, all those crap is there. But trust me, given an option, I would love to be a live musician, playing every day, whatever. I mean, that's still a thrill for me. Better than recording, if you ask me.
Absolutely.
Be with the crowd, play for the crowd, be there in the scene. Next best is recording. Why not? And if you're jamming, I'm even cool with jamming with good musicians there. But the thing is, you need to find them, to play with them. That's why. Nitin is speaking purely from a creative output. He has some set standards, and like I said, he's done all these things and all that. But for me, I would like to be involved. Like to be doing something even now.
Yeah.
Because the moment I don't do that, trust me, I feel really empty. Like, what the fuck am I doing? Am I making money, earning, moving ahead in life and all that crap? But I still feel empty. उसका कुछ कीड़ा है, has to be there. It has to keep going. I mean, that's still there.
See,
I hope it stays.
I agree with what you're saying. It's just that a matter of priorities. It's like, if you had to form a band, you would need to put the rest of your stuff that you're doing on hold.
Balance it out. See, it's not like the ultimate thing to do, right? Everyone is even now. It's a weekend musicians. Spare time they kar raha hai. Not like music is the fulcrum of everything, and everything is revolving around it. Things are evolving. You have your priorities. Spare time. You screw around, you travel, you watch TV and all that. Okay, वो सब भी हो रहा है. All that also, if you guys are talented, as I'm speaking about guys who can really compose stuff and all that. If you have that talent, you can pull out. It might be slower, one album in 3 years for all you know, but it should come out there. If you have that talent, if you shown it in the past, people have appreciated it. It's a big deal. It's a big deal for someone to buy your album and appreciate it. Even talk about it today, man, it's a huge deal. So if you still have it, if you're still motivated and if you want to it, you can, if you want to. Otherwise, see, I know, end of the day, you need to survive, man. You need to, bread has to come. So, if that overtakes everything else, then it is a difficult thing. We've gone through so much. I know he's gone through a lot. All of us have. So, उसमें अगर music takes a backseat, ठीक है. But if you have a time, if you can, you should.